My former landlord tried to scam me out of thousands of dollars as he tried to claim that I had damaged his apartment in a way that went beyond my security deposit. But once I explained to my landlord that I am fully ready to go to small claims court with legitimate evidence to prove him wrong, this jerk decided to change his tune real quick, backing down in a way that honestly was really funny. Here's how it all went down. So a few years ago, I had moved out of an apartment that I had rented for almost 3 years. I took great care of the place and I cleaned it thoroughly before leaving, and I even fixed a couple of minor things that technically weren't even my responsibility. Well, a week after moving out, my former landlord emailed me, claiming that I had caused thousands of dollars in damages and that he would be keeping my entire security deposit. The list of supposed damages was ridiculous. Things like there being a worn-out carpet that was already old when I moved in, or there were stains on the wall that were clearly just normal wear and tear, or even a charge for replacing appliances that literally hadn't been touched in years. Now, I knew he was trying to scam me because I had taken detailed photos and videos of the entire apartment the day that I moved in, and I did the same thing again when I moved out. I responded politely at first, providing the date-stamped photos proving everything was in great condition, but he ignored me, and he sent me a final notice demanding payment for additional costs beyond my deposit, and it was right then that I decided to escalate. I sent him one last email, letting him know that I had all documentation ready, and that if he didn't return my full deposit within 5 business days, I would be filing a claim in small claims court, as well as contacting the local tenant board. He then went silent for 4 days, and then like magic, I got a check in the mail for my full deposit plus some interest. And of course, I got no apology and no explanation. I just got back the money that he tried to steal. And honestly, it felt so good knowing that being prepared and standing my ground finally paid off. I've heard so many terrible stories about landlords getting away with this stuff, so it was really satisfying to finally turn the tables. Okay, this landlord sucks for several reasons, but I think worst of all is that I'm willing to bet he's probably done this with previous tenants. He probably leaves all these things like kind of broken and all over the place, especially with the appliances and the walls and the carpets, just so he can go to these people and be like, I'm actually keeping that money, and I'm gonna have to charge you more. Sorry, but that's just the way it is. But thank goodness the original poster actually took videos of everything. Like, that's a genius way to handle things, and I think if you are getting a new apartment and you're definitely renting, like, that is something you absolutely have to do. So good for you, because I honestly can't imagine trying to get scammed like this, because this really would be a nightmare if you didn't have definitive proof. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for calling the non-emergency police line on my neighbors as their smoke alarm was going off and I literally smelled gas outside near their house? Because my boyfriend says I made a big deal out of nothing and that I should never call the police under any circumstance, leaving me kind of scratching my head if I did anything wrong because this situation was incredibly confusing. Here's how it all went down. Okay, I want to start off by saying that it's hot out and I live in an area where you can leave your doors open at night. So I woke up to my dog crying and a strong smell of something. I'm not exactly sure what it was. It wasn't gas, but I thought maybe it was kerosene though. But honestly, I'm not exactly sure what it smells like either. But I also know that people do camp in our alley. So I went out just to check that none of our things were leaking or there was like a fire or something like that. And I then heard my neighbor's smoke alarm going off. I walked over to their place and there were no lights on or any cars in the driveway. I then played fetch with my dog a bit just to calm her down, but the alarm never went off. So I called the non-emergency police line, and let me tell you, that lady was less than nice. She wouldn't listen to any details and just got angrier and angrier because I gave her the wrong address. Now, mind you, I have not lived here that long, and I was previously asleep and I wanted to be back asleep, so I guess I transposed some numbers by accident. Anyways, all this commotion woke my boyfriend up, and then he was livid because he thinks you should never call the cops. But literally at this point, their alarm had been going off for like an hour, and I don't think it was a fire because I didn't see any smoke, and I don't think it was carbon monoxide because that doesn't smell, but there was a definitive gas smell in the neighborhood. They eventually came back an hour ago and the alarm is off and the smell is gone, so I think that's a good thing, but he is still super mad about it. So am I the jerk here? Because honestly, I was just trying to help and I didn't think I did anything wrong. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. You literally smell gas and there's an alarm going off in your neighbor's house. Like seriously, that's something I absolutely would call the cops about as well, especially if my neighbors aren't home. Like you're just trying to be a responsible neighbor. It's not like you're trying to like get anybody in trouble. You obviously don't want their house to burn down. Like seriously, you're just trying to be nice and like do the right thing. So no, you're not the jerk. I think your boyfriend's being weird, and honestly, I think there are good reasons to call the cops, especially if there's a risk of your neighbor's house possibly lighting on fire. I am so sick of my mom controlling what I wear or how I decorate my room. And despite the fact that I'm moving out in 2 weeks, I'm honestly still scratching my head of how to deal with these people in my life, because right now I feel so stuck. Here's what's going on. I want to start off by saying that I'm actually moving out of my parents' house in 2 weeks, so that is a really good thing to look forward to. But I hate how my mom tries to dictate what I should and shouldn't wear. She thinks that just because I'm an adult and no longer a teenager, I should be more classy and not wear as much crop tops and jeans. But literally, I do wear different types of things. Like, I swear I wear skirts and dresses too, but I hate how much I have to walk on eggshells or have anxiety over what outfits to wear every time I'm going out. I used to feel so good about myself in my clothing, but now I just don't know anymore. Not to mention, she wants me to decorate my room in a more classy and adult-like way, so she's saying I can't have any LED lights up, no tapestries or posters, and I'm honestly worried that once I move out, I'm gonna have a hard time with that because I'm scared of her reactions when she comes over and sees my bedroom. I find it really hard to set boundaries or stand up for myself in any kind of way, but I feel like not many people my age have to go through this level of control, and I'm honestly just so fed up and tired. I want to feel independent when I'm living on my own, but I'm worried I won't ever achieve that feeling because right now I seriously feel so stuck. Okay, honestly, as someone who does live by themselves, it is the best. Seriously, moving away from your family and like having your own place to yourself is a lot of fun. But I cannot emphasize this enough, and someone in the comments said this and I can't agree more. Under no circumstance should you ever give your parents a key to your home, because based on what you're describing, I guarantee you they'll take advantage of that and be like, okay, now we have full access to where you live. And that's not cool, man. You don't want that kind of energy in your life, and you really don't want them all over you still, even as you move out. Because the new place you're gonna live at is gonna be something you can customize however you want, meaning that this is a place your mom has absolutely no say over. A pair of entitled boomers are literally trash-talking Canadians while they take a cruise just so they could see Canada. And I'm honestly baffled at this massive waste of money that they made, especially if they don't like Canada in the first place. Here's how it all went down. I live in Michigan on the shore of Lake Huron, and just under it to be more specific. For my birthday this weekend, we went on a small local cruise that's about 2 hours that goes along the Canadian shore of St. Clair River, a bit into Lake Huron, a few port tours of Sarnia and Ontario, and then back again to where we started. My girlfriend is also Canadian and joined me on this cruise. Well, these two old people sit next to us, and we don't think anything of it and just ignore them, to be completely honest. There's no assigned seating on the boat, and we got some prime seats at the top deck for us just being early for boarding, so we kind of expected it. However, as we got closer to Canada, they started to complain. They started saying stuff like, man, they wish they were Americans. You know, our dollar is like 20 to theirs, which is laughably untrue, by the way. Look at them, just sitting there longing for America. Now, at this point, I don't want to make a huge scene because it is a tiny boat, and while technically a cruise, it can still only have like 100 people, and it's more like a small yacht than a standard cruise ship. I started talking to my girlfriend casually, but specifically about Canadian things. For example, at one point we saw some Canadian geese, and I talked loudly enough for the boomer couple to hear me say how ironic it is that a Canadian hates Canadian geese, basically just making them aware that they're sitting next to a Canadian and a soon-to-be one. Well, they actually stopped their crap after that, and if anything, they just avoided us even more, much to our happiness. We were thinking of moving seats if they kept going, but thankfully we didn't have to do that. Now, aside from the annoying political trash talk, I really want to know their thinking process here. Like, if you really hate Canadians, why are you going to take a cruise that costs more money so that you can look at Canadians, Canada, and get even more mad the entire time about it? It baffles me that someone would spend their Saturday doing that because honestly, this just doesn't make any sense. Okay, as someone from America, I can't stand people who act like this. They like to pretend that this country's perfect and they're like, oh yeah, these people want to be Americans. And sure, if it's like a third world country and they're like, yeah, my life sucks and I don't have like roads or anything like that, then sure, they could be like, oh man, I wish I lived in America. But Canada is not a third world country. It's a first world country, dude. Like, what's going on right now? They're just as technologically advanced as America, dude. Like, what's happening? Why would you sit there on a boat and be like, oh wow, look at them. They wish they were in America. Meanwhile, it's like a literal flaming dumpster fire over here, and it's like, dude, what are you doing? As if we want to give people from other countries more of a reason not to like this country altogether. So yeah, these people were completely out of their mind, and they were so stupid for acting this way. And I'm so glad you said something because that clearly got the message through that they were acting incredibly dumb. My entitled aunt doesn't believe that we matter as a family, as she is going out of her way to make sure she's the only one that gets any kind of inheritance from my grandma and grandpa. And honestly, this is exhausting to see, and I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so this story is about my entitled aunt. She has always been a bit snobby, and that has sort of shaped how I and my side of the family interact with her and her side. My aunt has 3 kids and had been married 3 times. All of the men had been past friends of my dad's, and I think most of them were from college. The 2 oldest kids are my older cousins, and they're both girls, and they are from the first husband, and the 3rd kid, who is my little cousin who is a boy, he comes from the 3rd husband. My aunt and uncle have always done things for the benefit of just their family, and I seriously mean just the nuclear family. While my 2 older cousins would split their time between their parents, my aunt and uncle really focus on themselves and their son. My aunt and uncle treated my older cousins a lot differently than my younger cousin, and it seemed to affect them to the point that my older 2 cousins don't really have anything to do with my aunt and uncle anymore unless they absolutely need to. In the last few years, multiple things have changed for the family as a whole. My dad passed when he was relatively young. My mom, who had breast cancer when we were all younger, had her cancer come back during COVID, and it came back affecting her bones now. My grandpa also passed away in the last year, and all of this has given me the perception that life is something to be cherished, and it's not a for sure thing. Now, I'm saying this because things have been happening, and some things were mentioned about their wills. My grandpa passed away, and we have had talks about different things and how people want things when they go, which brings my aunt and uncle back into the fold. Apparently, at some point after grandpa passed away, my aunt talked to grandma and brought up how she, my aunt, was the only one left, so she would get everything after my grandma died. Now, first off, I don't want to think about losing grandma yet. I want her for however much longer we have her, but I do understand these talks sometimes need to happen. But I don't think I would ever say anything like this if I was in my aunt's shoes. Well, my grandma told my mom that my aunt had said all of this, and apparently my grandma's response back was to say, well, your brother had a family too. We're not just going to take away an inheritance from them just because he has passed away as well. Now, add to this on top of other claims that my aunt and uncle have said that the farm should be theirs, and how they will turn the nice horse barn that grandpa had built for grandma into some sort of cattle barn, and essentially kick my mother and sister out from usage of it, as well as a younger cousin who doesn't fall very far from either of his parents' trees, that grandpa promised him a certain amount of land. Now, mind you, this amount of land is a large portion of what my grandparents own in its entirety. If grandpa had promised younger cousins this amount of land, grandpa really would have tried to keep stuff equal for the rest of us. And also, there's 5 of us grandchildren in total. What my younger cousin is claiming would not have been feasibly possible to divide up the land that they own, as well as give all of us equal amounts if the amount my little cousin is saying is the amount stated. And yeah, I know I'm really just ranting about family, and I know there is nothing that I can do in this situation because there is honestly no need for it. My grandma and grandpa, before he passed away, took care of it, and I just need to get this off my chest about what is happening because honestly, my aunt is an exhausting person and I just don't know how to deal with this. Yeah, I've said it once, but I'll say it again. When money and property gets involved, people change, especially family. And I don't think it changes people in a bad way. If anything, it kind of like reveals who they really are. And hopefully, for the sake of like everybody's sanity, everyone sees exactly the way the aunt and uncle in this story truly are. They are selfish, greedy people who want everything, and they would happily watch you perish away with nothing if they can get it all in return. So hopefully all of this really is taken care of like you're saying, because I'm positive if given the chance, your aunt would happily betray the entire family just to get exactly what she wants. Am I the jerk for putting my neighbor's garbage onto their front porches after they literally refuse to put it in the proper container it's meant to go in? Because I am so tired of seeing this trash all over the place, but I'm really not sure if I might have crossed a line. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I live in a townhouse community. We have communal garbage chutes outside that are divided into garbage, compost, and recycling. The chutes have hatches on them that you have to open and then just simply drop the garbage down onto a main collection room. However, my neighbors seem to be unable to do this for some reason, and they simply dump their garbage bags, their recycling, and everything on the ground outside of the chutes. Some of them, I imagine, don't want to touch the handles on the chutes, or they're just completely lazy. The management has sent multiple emails about this, and the concerns regarding pests, rodents, and all the strata fees going up because someone has to be paid to clean up the mess on a weekly and sometimes daily basis. But today I had had enough, and I saw that several people had dumped their trash beside the chutes, causing it to spill over onto the sidewalk. A few of the pieces of trash were Amazon boxes with their addresses right on them. So I picked up the trash into those boxes, I walked them over to their doors, and I dropped them there. One of the neighbors saw me from their window and said, "What are you doing?" And I replied by saying, "Well, apparently you dropped this. It wasn't in the trash. Next time, put it where it's supposed to be." They then told me to get lost, and I just walked away. I emailed pictures of their mess to the property manager too, and there's a $50 fine for each time someone does it. So seriously, am I the jerk for doing this? It's just as easy to drop things down the chute as it is to walk over to them, drop your garbage all over the ground, and have someone else have to deal with it. And mind you, this is a lot of garbage and I'm honestly so sick of seeing it. Okay, in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk at all. This is so obnoxious and it makes the entire place look bad. Because if it really is as easy as you're saying, then holy crap, there's no excuse here. They literally should be able to just throw this stuff away, no problem. Especially if it's not like overfilled or anything like that. Just put it in there and then everybody's happy. So no, you're not the jerk because this is literally the consequence of their actions, and honestly, they need to own up to it. My landlord mistakenly moves all of my stuff out of my apartment when I literally still had 5 days left on our lease. So I decided to get some revenge by hiding raw chicken all over the apartment, eventually making this place unlivable because of the smell. Here's how I did it. About 15 years ago, I had a 5-year-old and an infant. We lived in Texas in these awful apartments. The air conditioning rarely worked, there was a huge roast infestation that we couldn't get rid of, there was flooding, there was mold, and honestly, I think you get the point. Well, our lease was finally coming to an end. So we stayed at our new apartment the first day to enjoy the air conditioning and planned on finishing the small stuff that following day. But to my surprise, when we arrived, they had moved all of the appliances to another unit and just emptied my freezer into trash bags. The worst part about it is that they put the bags on our porch in the Texas heat. So I was really pissed off and I marched right into the leasing office. They claimed they thought that we had finished moving out and it was somehow just a misunderstanding. They then said they needed the appliance for a new move-in. On top of this, they refused to compensate me for the hundreds of dollars of meat they ruined, knowing dang well that there was still 5 days left on our lease. So my boyfriend and I decided to get some revenge. And this is where we took some chicken and placed it throughout the apartment in places they wouldn't normally look, like in the vents, behind the toilet tanks, etc. And remember, the air conditioning didn't work. Plus, it was really hot that summer. We went back a week later and they had the door wide open, maybe trying to air the place out. And honestly, I couldn't even get past the door due to the smell and all of the flies. Well, needless to say, I never got an invoice or my deposit back, but I'm willing to bet that they had a lot of trouble renting that apartment out for quite some time. Dude, that is some brave decisions you made there, holy crap. You literally decided to hide raw chicken all over that place to get revenge on them, knowing full well that this was going to stink up that place. And I don't know if you've ever had to deal with raw chicken that's gone bad, but oh my gosh, it smells so bad. I've made that mistake once, and trust me, I will never make that mistake again. Because just like it's being described, that's like a magnet for flies, dude. It's a quick way to ruin your apartment and pretty much everything around you. So good for you for getting revenge because these people definitely deserve it. Am I the jerk for asking a woman at my residential gym to please stop talking so loudly on the phone during her workout? Because now as a result, she's basically started acting out even worse. And at this point, I don't know if I made a mistake or what to do in this situation. Here's what's going on. So I live in an apartment building that has a small residents-only fitness center. Recently, one of the new residents starts coming in almost every single time that I'm there. She spends about 45 minutes or more talking very loudly on the phone while walking on the treadmill or just sitting on the bench. She wears headphones so she doesn't realize that she's basically shouting across the entire gym. Her conversations usually last the entire time she's in the gym, and on top of that, she sometimes laughs out loud very loudly, or she drops machine handles down so that they slam with a loud crash. And trust me, it makes it really hard for anyone else to focus on anything. Now, most of the other residents are too shy to say anything about this, so I decided to politely ask her if she would please just finish her call after her workout. When I said this, she completely ignored me and just kept talking. But the next time she came back, she behaved even more disruptively, and it feels like she didn't like my comment and is now acting out on purpose. The administration doesn't monitor the gym at all, since it is just part of the building, so there are no staff members around to enforce basic etiquette. I feel like I was polite and reasonable, since phone calls at full volume in a small shared space are incredibly disruptive, but I really need to know, did I cross a line here by telling her to stop talking so loudly? Because this really is bothering a lot of people and I just don't know what to do. Oh, I'm so glad I found this story because this literally is one of my biggest pet peeves on planet Earth. If you're gonna be on your phone, have the decency to at least be quiet. Don't be loud and obnoxious in a crowded setting, like that's so stupid. I don't want to hear what you're talking about, and I don't want to hear how much fun you're having. Like seriously, just shut up and get a room or go anywhere else. Don't do this in a space where people are trying to focus on other things. This is like in the same vein of people who will literally play a YouTube video on their phone as loud as possible with no headphones or anything. Like they just don't care about what's going on around them, or that they might be disrupting other people that are in the vicinity. So no, you're not the jerk for saying something, because I know if I was in your shoes, I probably would have done the exact same thing. Am I the jerk for telling a friend that she can't come with me to a concert anymore, all because she didn't pay me back for the tickets I bought for her in a timely fashion? Here's how it's all going down. So I've purchased 2 tickets back in April for myself and a friend to come with me. As she has kids and asked if she could pay later, I just didn't pressure her. But fast forward to 2 weeks ago, and I started getting antsy about it, and I asked her to pay me back for her ticket. She said she would, but 2 weeks pass and still nothing has happened. I then asked her Friday night if she could pay me back, saying I could use the money for the weekend, to which she replied, yeah, I'll do it. Well, Sunday rolls around and halfway through the day, I still haven't received anything. Now, I hate canceling on people, but at that point, I told her I would just take someone else, to which she replied about her struggles and how stressed out she was. And she tried saying that I even told her that she could go for free, which is honestly completely false. She did eventually send me money, but it was far less than the agreed amount. And she only did this after I went after her like 3 different times. So you know what? I just sent the money back and I got someone else to come with me. And on one hand, I do feel like crap, but also I feel like my needs were not in consideration at all. So am I the jerk right now because this really is a tough situation? Okay, honestly, the fact that she's not willing to pay it back immediately, in my opinion, is a big red flag. I don't care if someone has like kids or any other kind of problems in their life. If I tell them I'm buying a ticket for them for a concert, I expect them to pay it back the first time I ask about it, not the second or third. Like, that's inappropriate. That's completely uncalled for and very rude. So no, you're not the jerk here because honestly, she needed to pay you back. And the fact that she was unwilling to do so in a timely manner is incredibly annoying.
A power-hungry employee doesn't know that I am the owner. I once owned a computer store with one of my friends. As we started to grow, we found it was becoming more and more difficult to handle all the in-store repairs as well as the out-of-store work that we had coming in. We decided that we needed somebody for the front counter. Unfortunately, I went on vacation when my partner had hired her. Not that this was a problem as we knew what we needed, and I knew he could find someone. When I returned from vacation, I had some out-of-town work that needed to be done with a high-dollar client. This work took another 2 weeks, so I had not had the chance to meet the new employee. The first day back just happened to be the same day my partner started his vacation. I walk in. Hi, you must be the new employee. The power mad bee cuts me off and says, I don't care who you are. What can I help you with? I don't see you with a computer. What are you looking for? I say, excuse me? The power mad bee says, you should be. What do you need? I have a lot to do to open the store. I say, sorry, I don't think you understand who I am. She tells me, you're no one important. I say, oh, really? You do know I could have you unemployed in 1 hour. She tells me, oh yeah, whatever. I personally know the owner. He hired me personally. I doubt he would fire me. Get out of the store before I call the cops. I say, I doubt he would want you to treat people like trash. But yeah, that's a good idea. Let's call the cops. Okay, here we go. I'm calling them. Great, I say. I pull out my cell phone and I call my partner. Hey, I know you're on vacation, dude, but I think we have an employee problem. PMB, the power mad bee, was very rude when I walked in this morning. I attempted to tell her who I was, but she wouldn't let me get that far. Now she's calling the cops to have me removed. Yeah, I can hand you over, 1 sec. Oh, who is this? Someone who's playing the part of the owner now? I know what he sounds like. I hand her the phone. She now has 2 phones to her head. My cell phone and the office phone, which may or may not have had the police on the line. I still don't know if she ever did call the police. I hear him laying into her. I couldn't hear the conversation. However, I did ask him later. Here's the basics. My partner said, I basically told her I'm tired of her holier-than-thou attitude, and if she can't accept people coming into the store and interrupting her, she is not cut out to work in the store anymore. I told her, she just told the other owner that they're not welcome. Pack up your stuff. She would no longer be needed. PMB hangs up the office phone and hands my cell phone back to me with tears in her eyes. I say, you want me to work up some termination paperwork? My partner tells me, yeah, let me know how it turns out. I have a stack of applications on my desk. I'll see you in a week. I say, hey, PMB, you got your paycheck Friday, correct? PMB nods, yes. Awesome. I owe you about $5 for the 30 minutes you wasted today. I take 10 minutes to type up the reason for the termination, all while she sits in a chair bawling like a 2-year-old. Thanks. Don't let the door smack your butt on the way out. I walk over to the register, pull out a 5, and point her towards the door. door. We never saw her again. Update from the future. It's become very clear from many of the comments that none of you have ever been a business owner. To each their own. Many things will happen in your life that when you tell someone else, they won't believe you. That's fine. If you don't believe, then don't believe. It doesn't bother me. So was I the jerk for firing this employee? Just the fact that this employee cut off the owner before the owner could even say anything is really all you need to know, because insert any person being in that position. If it wasn't the owner, let's say it was a customer. A customer's in that position, they come in the store, they don't have a computer, and this employee is basically going to berate them because they're wasting their time and they have a lot to do to set up the store. I mean, the whole reason you set up the store is to sell to customers. So she was obviously acting under the assumption that this was a customer, and why would you ever treat a customer like that? That could have been a customer that works for a giant business and wanted to buy a huge bulk order of 100 computers, but wouldn't want 20 more because who would want to be treated like that? Nobody. You have to really be easily agitated to immediately reach for "I'm calling the cops" based on one brief, uncomfortable moment with a customer. I've seen people get like this when a lot of bad stuff has already happened earlier that day, but from the sounds of this was at the very start of the workday. She was still setting up. So if this was your employee, would you have fired them or would you have given them another chance? Let me know down below in jerk or not a jerk and why. Before we jump into the next story, if you guys don't know, we actually have a second channel where you can hear some personal stories. There's a link to subscribe to that down below in the description. And you can of course always submit your stories as well. My new boss tries to demand that we work overtime for free. Enjoy trying to open the store with no employees. First off, I'm a non-native English speaker. Secondly, unfortunately, this story came back into my mind due to the recent death of the hero of the story. Grumpy, you will be missed. I met Grumpy in Narcotics Anonymous. He volunteered there after they helped him and became my sponsor. Seeing that I was trying to get my act together, he offered me my first job out of high school. Grumpy was a manager of a store for a company that sold everything you needed to build a house, from cement and bricks to custom-made cupboards. I started as a loader, filling trucks that were making deliveries. A little background for the company. It plays an important role later. When they started back in the early 80s, they sold everything you needed to build a brick and mortar home wholesale to professionals. During their first expansion, they got a really good reputation for their prices of power tools, custom cupboards, and landscaping, including custom-made garden furniture. The stores were basically big warehouses. In the mid-90s, they opened their doors to the general public, which accompanied by a rising trend of do-it-yourself (DIY) skyrocketed their sales. That brought a second, smaller wave of expansion and the opening of the online store, first only with phone orders and then later with a proper site. When I joined, they were doing a third shift on their business plan. They had cut down on things that weren't a big seller, like bricks and concrete, and were focusing more on the big sellers: custom-made furniture, landscaping tools, and for some weird reason, plumbing. My first 8 months on the job were a dream. Grumpy was an excellent manager. Having started in the company at roughly the same age that I was and being promoted to the ranks, he had developed a very distinct managerial style. His concept was simple. If my employees are happy, they work better and provide better services, which leads to better sales. That meant while Grumpy managed one of the inner city stores, meaning medium to small size compared to the others, we were fourth in revenue, nationwide, and first in customer happiness. And then the reason for his nickname struck. While everyone called him Grumpy, a nickname he was kind of proud of, he was far from it. The reason was he had a medical condition that affected his nerves and had left him with a permanent frown on his face. He had declined a promotion due to that condition, knowing the extra stress would make his condition flare up, meaning he wouldn't be as effective as he would like. His medical condition flared up unexpectedly and Grumpy had to be hospitalized and be on sick leave for a time. Headquarters decided not to have one of Grumpy's assistants be an acting manager for the duration, but instead bring in a regional manager to take over the store for the duration. Let's call him Wilhelm. Wilhelm was the exact opposite of Grumpy. He was younger than Grumpy. He was in his late 20s and Grumpy was in his late 30s. He had a business degree and hadn't worked the floor at all. He was hired from the beginning as an office drone and then climbed his way to regional manager. The reason he was put in charge of our store had to do with the change of the business plan of the company. You see, the change of focus had created a lot of empty space in the stores. A supermarket chain had approached the company with an offer to rent the empty space, especially for inner city stores. The company had accepted and placed regional managers in key stores to help with integration. The thing is, the supermarket chain had a reputation of being bad employers. That was reinforced to us by one of our tellers who had worked for them for 3 years before quitting to join us. Wilhelm also didn't help. His managerial style was based in only one concept: make more money in any way possible. He started changing our schedule from monthly to weekly weekly, changing the sales targets to unrealistic heights, and always demanded more. In the first 2 weeks, 6 inexperienced people had left. 4 quit and 2 were fired, and were replaced by young, inexperienced people that were easier to manipulate. And then the integration happened. The floor was the first to feel the problem. The supermarket opened its doors and was understaffed. Wilhelm started sending people over to help for 4 to 6 hours, while also demanding to work their regular shifts. If someone declined, he or she was written up. 2 write-ups in 6 months and you were fired. Then Wilhelm came to lay the law down in the loading bay. The loading bay was shared between the 2 stores. Wilhelm declared that we had first helped the 2 guys of the supermarket unload their trucks first because their products were perishable, and then started loading our own trucks. That would throw our delivery schedule to the wind. The loading crew worked from 5 in the morning until 1 p.m. We loaded the first trucks that had longer to travel, so they would be ready to leave at 7. The company had a next day delivery policy for a 150-mile radius. What Wilhelm declared meant we couldn't start loading our trucks before 7:30, and they couldn't start their routes before 9:30. We said as much, but Wilhelm didn't care. He said we had to do both jobs. When someone inquired about overtime, Wilhelm said no. He said we already made too much money with unsocial hours between 5 and 8 and leaving early, so he wouldn't approve overtime. So from a nice environment that you wanted to work for, we all started getting miserable. We lost 10 people in the loading crew in a month because of the new rules. The new hires didn't last long. The floor was a mess and started turning personnel faster than a dollar lady of the night. Anyone who's staying is either looking for another job, is afraid of unemployment, or is too young to know better. The sales had a very small decline, but the customer happiness plummeted fast. After almost 6 months, all the old guard that was left was ready to quit, but our savior came back. Almost 6 months from the day he was hospitalized, Grumpy walks in the store to claim his rightful position. He isn't a knight in shining armor, riding a pure white horse, carrying a legendary sword. He is in normal attire, slightly limping and holding a cane. We have a welcome back party and have a small glimmer of hope now that he is back. We are informed that Grumpy will be on light duties for 2 weeks before he becomes a manager again. Despite Grumpy being back, Wilhelm still remains the regional manager, which means he outranks Grumpy and makes it very clear in private meetings with all of us. If he caught us complaining to Grumpy, we were as good as gone. Still, a few of us are planning to have a meeting with Grumpy after the weeks, letting him getting his sea legs back. But another department had other ideas. During his reign of terror, the only department that Wilhelm couldn't control was the workshop. He knew that if he treated them as bad as he did to us, they would quit and the sales would go from a small decline to bottom of the barrel real quick. As I said, custom-made furniture was the #1 seller, so the head carpenter had a meeting with Grumpy on the second day about the future of the workshop. In reality, the guy spilled his beans on Wilhelm. With the pretext of catching up with the changes, Grumpy was meeting with everyone, learning what Wilhelm had done and why we had so many new staff. You could feel he was getting angrier with every meeting. He also had an eye-opening meeting with the manager of the supermarket. Finally, the time had come when he became manager again. The revenge. On his first day back as manager, Grumpy notifies everyone of a mandatory meeting after the store is closed. He has a solution, so gather in the store after closing hours, and Grumpy lays out the plan. For the next couple of days, nobody except him is coming to the store. If anyone calls us, we should direct them to him, which we did when we started getting calls about the store being closed. Grumpy's answer to headquarters was simple. The staff was working on a second job during their shifts, which is a breach of contract, so I had to fire them all and find new staff. That caught headquarters' attention because nothing of the sort was reported in the last 6 months. They asked Grumpy for evidence, which he happily provided with our written testimonies, which brought on a lot of trouble for Wilhelm. You see, Wilhelm had an arrangement with the supermarket manager. He got a kickback from our unpaid labor for the supermarket, and the manager offered the same thing to Grumpy. He also included that Wilhelm regularly declined to sign overtime, which meant that if any one of us went to the labor department, the company would get a really huge fine. The aftermath. Wilhelm got quickly fired. We all received calls to interview with the company for an open position. We all received severance pay for our firing, plus most of the unpaid overtime, about 80% of it. Almost all of us went back to work with a small pay raise based on experience. The company took a long, hard look on the supermarket chain and distanced themselves from them. They stayed until their lease was over, but no shared employees anymore, and a lot of theirs jumped ship over to our side. Next time Grumpy had to take time off, one of his assistants took over. 2 of them did a stellar job, leading to being promoted in managers of other stores. Grumpy brought back his usual managerial style, leading again to the rise of sales and customer happiness. I left the job 3 years later for a better paying position, but I still remember Grumpy as one of the best managers I ever had. So, was I the jerk for the role I played in the revenge? The core issue that everything stems from is the fact that Wilhelm has a managerial style where his only goal is to make money in any way possible, but he ends up shooting himself in the foot because cutting all these corners, treating everyone bad, maybe would lead to some sort of short-term monetary gain, but in the long term, you're gonna lose. I think pretty much anyone that has worked for a long time will realize that Grumpy's philosophy is a lot more true. If you just treat people well, they're much more likely to put their heart into their work instead of trying to cut corners because you're trying to cut corners. It's such a simple concept that somehow so many people that get into a position of power seem to completely miss. And if you were to ask Wilhelm, they would probably justify it by saying, well, I wanted to show short-term results because I'm not going to stick around here for the long term. And if that's where he's coming from, then there's a problem with the incentive structure of the company itself that allows a situation like that to happen in the first place. So let me know what you guys think of this revenge down below. Was it justified or was it going too far? And jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for refusing to support my son's pregnant girlfriend until she takes a paternity test? My son is 24 years old and his girlfriend is also 24. They've only been together for 6 months and she is apparently 4 months pregnant with his baby. They've actually been friends since high school, and so my husband and I have known her for a few years as well. She is a lovely girl, but honestly, she is not someone I had hoped would be the mother to my first grandchild. First of all, she is a recovering addict and a lush, and while she says she has been clean for 3 years, a relapse is always possible. She only finished high school with her GED, and she now works as a waitress full-time. Her parents died years ago, so she is largely on her own. Our family is considerably better off, and my son is joining his father's business, meaning his salary will be quite high and will only continue to grow. Since my son first told us she is pregnant, it can't escape my mind that he may not really be the father, and that she picked him out of potential others because he would be the best in terms of support. My son is pushing us to help her with some of her pregnancy expenses, and I told him that we would, under the condition that she get a paternity test first. He completely blew up at that, accusing us of disliking her, which is untrue, and not wanting us to be grandparents, also untrue. He says that he loves her and he trusts her, and that he can't wait to meet his baby. I get that, but I think he's being idealistic. If he wants our support, we want a paternity test first. If the baby is truly his, then we would be happy to welcome her into our family, and we would be happy to help her out. There have been a lot of responses to this post, and it's a pretty even mix of jerk and not a jerk. So clearly, the only thing everyone can agree with is that it's gotten complicated. I've gotten messages calling me an idiot, calling my son an idiot. I have gotten messages from the MGTOW subreddit telling me that the girlfriend is clearly a lying sociopath. I have also gotten messages from men who have found out their child wasn't theirs after several years, who wish they had found out sooner. It's a lot to read and a lot to think about. Many people have called out my attitude towards this girl, and I'll be honest, it's making me think. Jumping into the future, there is an update. After my original post, I talked to my son and asked him what kind of financial help he had in mind. According to him, since she does not have insurance, many of her medical costs were adding up, and he wanted to help her with those. A lot of people ask me why my adult son was reliant on us, but to us, that's not unusual. He is a recent graduate, and while he will be making a decent salary soon, he has just entered the workforce and does not have much in the way of savings. Plus, our family has always believed in helping each other out. If my daughter was pregnant, we would no doubt help her. I expressed my desire for the paternity test for his benefit, but he would not budge on that. I tried to warn him of the countless stories of fathers duped into parenting children that weren't his, but he was certain. A couple weeks later, his girlfriend actually reached out to me herself. We met up and she told me she was embarrassed he had asked for financial help on her behalf, as she did not want to take on any assistance. This surprised me as I assumed she was the one pushing for the money. She was uncomfortable with the paternity test idea, but said she would look into it if it bridged the peace between me and my son. With COVID, the paternity test never ended up happening. It just wasn't a priority. Over the past few months, I have been talking with them more and more, and my husband and I bought them a substantial gift for their new home as a gesture of apology and goodwill. We did offer financial help, but my son refused it. By the time the baby was born, I had gotten to know his girlfriend better and was warming up to her joining our family. She truly is a delightful young woman, more so than I gave her credit for. The baby was born 7 weeks ago. It's a boy, and my son is absolutely absolutely thrilled. I have not got to meet him yet, but I have gotten to see him over video chat and in photos. He looks like my son. It's not an exact resemblance, but I can see my son in this little boy's face, enough that paternity doubts are firmly in the back of my mind. Truthfully, I have fallen in love with this little boy, and watching my son grow into becoming a father has been the proudest thing in my life. If I had missed this, I would have never forgiven myself. So, was I the jerk for refusing to support my son's pregnant girlfriend until she took a paternity test originally? In this situation, I don't think the OP is a jerk for asking for proof before providing financial support, but the thing that does come off as being a jerk is perceiving someone only as an amalgamation of their negative traits. I mean, even though the girl is an addict, she is recovering, and being clean for 3 years is a big accomplishment. Of course, a relapse is always possible, but it's your money. You can request a paternity test if you want without casting judgment or trying to assume what her intentions were by saying because she has all these issues in the past, she's most likely faking the pregnancy because my son's family has more money. I could see situations where it was more directly related, like she was a known scammer or she had done something sort of related in the past, but if she's a recovering addict, she probably doesn't want to go back in that direction, and that's probably why she was shocked to find out that the son was asking the parents for money because that's not what she wanted. With these type of situations, there's so much nuance, it's always hard to tell unless you actually meet these people. We're just going off of what we've seen here. So what do you think of this whole thing? Do you think the OP was originally a jerk or not a jerk, and why? Let me know down below. Can my parents force a paternity test? My wife was assaulted. She got pregnant and the baby could be mine or the person who assaulted her. We decided to keep the baby and raise it as mine. We never wanted to have a paternity test done on the baby because this could be devastating to her relationship with my wife. I am a massive moron, and after my daughter was born, I let slip to my parents that she might not be mine biologically. I tried to backtrack, but my parents kept pushing and pushing until my wife sat them down and explained the situation. They do not believe her. They think that she cheated and that she's using me. Now my parents have approached me about taking a paternity test. They want me to contest paternity and leave my wife. I do not want to. I have made a commitment to my wife and my daughter, and I stand by it. I trust my wife, my parents don't. They told me that if I refuse, they will go to the courts and compel me to do a paternity test to absolve me of responsibility for the baby. They want me to leave my wife regardless. I am planning to cut contact with my parents over this, but is there any way that they can legitimately force me to do a paternity test? Is there something I can do to prevent this or fight them? We are located in Rhode Island. Update from the future. Pretty soon after I posted, I received a letter in the mail from a lawyer that basically said that my parents were demanding a paternity test on the basis of grandparents' rights. I knew from my post that it was unlikely that a lawyer would take this case, so I googled the law firm and the lawyer's name. I couldn't find the lawyer's name anywhere, but the law firm was real, so I reached out to them. The letter was a fake, and the law firm was not happy. They asked for the letter and are pursuing some sort of legal action against my parents. I don't know exactly what's happening as I have not been in contact with my parents for a while. In other news, my daughter was recently diagnosed with a very minor skin condition that is fairly uncommon and that I also have, which means she's most likely mine after all. We still won't be doing a paternity test anytime soon, but it was helpful for our peace of mind. So, what do you think we should do from here? Pretending to be a lawyer that works at a law firm that you have no association with sounds like a pretty big deal. I'm guessing that's something the law firm is probably going to want to sue for any damages to their reputation. When it comes to the parents, it sounds like both parents here, the OP and the wife, are at peace with not taking the test. I think most people out there would take the test no matter what, but that's their decision and that's what they want to do. They don't want the test. And grandparents' rights, I don't even know if that's a real thing, but clearly if it is, it's not a very strong thing to go off of because they had to fake a lawyer in order to get action taken. So let me know what your theories are on this whole situation. What do you think is going to happen? Let me know down below. A rude customer comes into my business and demands to speak to the manager, but I'm the owner. He doesn't believe that a woman could own a business like this, since my business is in a male-dominated industry. So he continues to demand to see a male manager, one that he had met before, and that's when things take a turn. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. This happened about a year ago, right after I had opened 2 niche hobby shops. It's an incredibly male-dominated hobby. My typical clients are retired white dudes driving nice Audis and BMWs. I am a small 30-year-old chick covered literally head to toe in tattoos, but none on my face though. A new customer to me walks in. Apparently he had been in before while I was out of the shop and one of my male managers helped him. He walks into my shop and when I smile and greet him with a "Hi, how are you?" he kind of just grunts at me. Okay, whatever. Sometimes people just want to be left alone to browse. I stay on my computer finishing up some ordering and let him wander a bit. He is taking his time but is clearly a bit agitated. So I ask if he is looking for anything in particular or if he is just browsing. He just looks at me, a pregnant pause where I begin to wonder if I should speak up. Like I said, old 1%ers are my bread and butter. When he finally breaks the silence, it's not with a polite response but with a gruff, "Where's your manager?" I have been in retail for 15 years. I'm used to the people who just don't remember their manners. But this question doesn't make me think, oh, he's looking for my boss. It makes me think, oh, he's looking for one of my employees. So I start to ask a couple qualifying questions. I'm the only one here today. What can I help you with? No, I want to speak to the man that is in charge. I'll wait. He says in a very condescending way, "Sir, I am in charge. What can I help you with?" "No, there is a man who helped me here last week and he and I were discussing a project and I'd like to speak with him directly, so I can tell him what I want ordered." This is where I started to get a little snippy. Yay for working for yourself. I was frustrated that he was speaking to me in such a tone that he couldn't seem to understand that I am in charge. Well, sir, I am in charge here. I do the ordering, so what did you need me to order? He lets you do the ordering? Sir, I can see we aren't going to get anywhere. If you would like to come back later, you are more than welcome. But considering you won't speak to me and would rather speak to a male employee, maybe it would be best for you to come back at another time. Obviously, this enrages the entitled jerk and he gets so red that I was sure he would pop at any second. He starts sputtering and he takes a couple steps towards me. I have a particular character flaw where I forget that I am 5 feet tall, so I stand my ground. My mother calls it a lack of self-preservation. He demands my boss's phone number. Now I realize maybe I wasn't clear enough. I get cut off. Now, being ignored and interrupted are two of my biggest pet peeves, and this man has accomplished both in a relatively short amount of time, so I hand him a business card and walk off. He immediately calls a number and my cell phone starts ringing, so I answer. "Thank you for calling. You've reached the store owner at my store." I say all of this while staring at him right in the face. I'm petty as hell, and even this made me wonder if I had gone too far. He stormed out and I never saw him again. Still cracks me up when I remember his red, veiny face staring at me with wide eyes. So, am I the jerk? Did I go too far? This has got to be so frustrating to be in a situation like this where people just assume that you couldn't possibly be the person in charge no matter what you try to tell them. Sometimes even when you speak clearly and you tell people a certain thing, the actual words themselves aren't getting through, so you have to say the same exact thing but just in other words. So in this case, the thing that might have cut through was just saying, "I'm the owner. I literally own this place. That's what I mean when I say I'm in charge. I own this store," rather than "I do the ordering" or "what other employee do you want to talk to?" It's always more obvious in retrospect, and maybe that wouldn't even solve this, but that would have been the best shot of clearing this up in the moment. Short-term solutions aside, it does suck that this type of stereotyping even happens in the first place. I think some people just perceive what certain people would be into, and that is their worldview. They won't look at it in any other way. So if this was you and this was your business, and one of your customers acted like this with you, what would you do? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk and why. Before we jump into the next story, don't forget to subscribe to the second channel where you can hear some personal stories of mine, and you could submit your own stories too. Link in the description. Am I the jerk for not attending my friend's wedding on the day of my family's death anniversary? I'm a 35-year-old female, and 7 years ago, I lost my husband, daughter, and mother to a car accident. They were hit by a drunk driver that drove through a red light and killed all of them on impact. Their deaths greatly affected me, and if it weren't for my friends and years of therapy, I would be in a much lower place. I am thankful for their support and have been able to process my grief properly. 2 years ago, I took a job offer that provided more benefits than my current one and moved far away from my city to another. I travel back to occasionally meet up with friends and of course to visit my family's graves on their death anniversary. It's a 7-hour car drive or around an hour by plane. Due to COVID last year, I drove to avoid contact with people and stayed in my old house. This year, I plan to do the same thing but ran into an issue with my friend having her wedding in my old city. My 33-year-old friend Amy announced that she was engaged last year to her boyfriend of 3 months. My friend group and I were quite shocked as we had never met him, nor did we know she was dating anyone as we usually tell each other, but nonetheless we congratulated her and we were happy for her. They were supposed to have their wedding last year but couldn't due to COVID and postponed it to this year. We are not in the US, by the way, and COVID cases are now less than 10 here in my country. We are allowed gatherings of less than 15 people, and that is what Amy decided to do for her wedding. About a week ago, Amy called me privately to tell me her plans for her wedding. She told me that she is having it on the same day of my family's death anniversary and would like me to not visit their graves and just attend the wedding instead. I was quite shocked that the wedding was planned that specific day and questioned as to why she picked that day. Amy told me she just liked the numbered date and told me that I can't just gatekeep a certain day. Then I asked her, why can't I go visit my family's grave? She told me she doesn't want my sadness and grief to take attention at her wedding. I was incredibly stunned at what she said. I know I am quite emotional, but I know how to compose and behave myself at certain events. Here's where I think I am the jerk. I told Amy that unfortunately I will not miss out on visiting my family's graves. I tried to ask for a compromise and told her if my emotions were that much of a problem, I'll attend their graves after the wedding was over. She said she wants my support for the entire day and dedicate it towards her, but she'll think about my offer. It's been a week and I have not heard from her. I feel like I should just go to the wedding to keep the peace as I owe it to her, especially after all the support and love she gave after my family's death, but it still doesn't feel right to just attend the wedding and forget about my family. Would I be the jerk if I told her I won't be attending the wedding at all if she hasn't reached a decision? But before you decide, there's an update from the future. I did what some of you suggested and called my other friends to let them know what Amy had asked of me. They were quite livid and angry for me as they had no idea what Amy was planning for the wedding. We arranged a Zoom call with her the next day to discuss why she is being so insensitive to me. Well, the call was quite the battle. It started off calm and then Amy just blew up. You guys were right when you said that Amy was jealous of the attention that I had received during the time of my family's death anniversary. Her wedding was a way to shift the attention towards her. She tried to explain to us, by having the wedding on that day, it will turn a negative situation into a positive one. When she realized she wasn't convincing enough, it felt as though a mask had fallen from her face as she started yelling and insulting me. She said that she is tired of having to play the supportive friend role and that it's been 7 years. I should just get over it by now or go join my family in the ground. My friend lost her anger and called her every name in the book. I'm honestly shocked and disappointed at the person who used to be my friend. It breaks my heart knowing I lost another person in my life, but I guess you guys are right in the sense that she never really was a friend. I now look back at our friendship and realize that it was often one-sided on my part. I wish it didn't take me so long to realize it. No one in our friend group of 6 people are going to her wedding now. We have decided to go no contact with Amy and block her on all social media. My friends have offered to go visit my family's graves together with me. I accepted, and we are now planning to also make a scrapbook with my family's pictures. For once, I am actually looking forward to this day, and we'll start to plan more eventful activities like this. Thank you once again to everyone for helping me through this, and please remember, do not drink and drive. I am begging you, please don't. Drive safely, everyone. So in the end, am I the jerk for not attending my friend's wedding on the day of my family's death anniversary? I think I, along with many people in the responses, were on the same wavelength when it comes to what they assumed the story was going to be when they first read the title. I really thought it was just going to be a coincidence or an accident or something, but the friend actually specifically chose that date because she was trying to turn a negative into a positive, and as a side bonus, she also likes that number of day. That's a really strange thing to do without talking to that person first, the person whose negative it is. It's the OP's negative day here. One of the top responses also interpreted it as that same thing initially. I read the title and thought it would be a nuanced tale. Perhaps the friend was unaware or forgot what the date meant after so many years. Perhaps it was the only date available after having to reschedule due to COVID, and the OP could have visited the graves and gone to the wedding, but in their grief couldn't handle witnessing any happy occasion on this date. Thus brings us to a sad tale of an OP that needed help moving past their understandably huge grief. But no, the friend is downright evil and stupid. Picked the date to purposely mess with the OP and didn't have the brain cells to realize ordering someone to not even visit their family graves wasn't going to fly. So even if she was trying to turn something that was a negative into a positive, and if she just really liked that date based on the number for some reason, why would you tell somebody they can't visit their family's graves on that day? Then the OP makes a suggestion, well, what about if I go visit them after the wedding? The OP is basically trying to compromise every way they can, and there's not even a clear response to that. If this really is like the OP says, all about attention, then that is a pretty sad way to get attention. But let me know how you see the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My wife told her friends that she settled for me, and I'm not sure what to do. We have a perfect marriage. We've been together for 9 years, married for 4. We rarely fight and we're often intimate. We go out on date nights, send memes to each other, the works. Recently, we got news that her ex-boyfriend overdosed and passed away. Now, my wife has no connection to him, so we expressed our condolences to his family over text and nothing more. She often goes out with her friends and I always let her. I have no problem with it because I used to trust her 100%. I had to work late, so I told my wife that if she wants, she can call her friends over to our place since I wouldn't be around. Well, the rains were heavy and our office was told to leave early because some light flooding was taking place on the roads. I reached home and I could tell her friends were there, so I quietly went to our room unnoticed. Everyone was speaking quite loudly though, so I could hear a lot, and the ex-boyfriend came up in the conversation. My wife said that 4 years into our relationship, she got a call from her ex-boyfriend, who lived in a trailer, offering to help her see the world. She said she had a bag packed and was ready to leave, but in the end decided not to and settled for the stability that I was giving her. I didn't know about any of this. She never told me, and she says that she apparently settled for me. One of her friends asked if she ever regretted her choice, and she said that she used to, but not recently. I guess that's it, right? I'm not unstable enough for her to be attracted to me. She has to settle for someone like me. That one word just keeps revolving in my head. I slipped out of the house and went to a cafe to gather my thoughts, but got a call from her asking me where I was, that I was due home half an hour ago. I went back and she greeted me with a hug and a kiss as always, but I wasn't really into it, and she asked me why my mood was off. I mumbled something like stress from work and went to bed, skipping dinner and our usual alone time, except I couldn't sleep. I woke up a few hours later into the night and sat on the balcony thinking about how I'm not good enough for her, about how I'm sure she doesn't love me. I know she at least loves me a little, but even for that I have no guarantee. It's the next day now. I didn't sleep much last night and my wife is still asleep. I didn't tell anyone anything about what she said because I just can't. What do I do here, guys? Should I even talk to her? Divorce? Is there any hope for us moving forward? Does she even want to move forward? I don't know. I'm sorry for how jumbled up this is. My head is not really in a good place right now. Jumping into the future, there is an update. I made a post the other day about my wife saying something jarring. Some people asked for an update, so here it is. Well, immediately after the revelation, first I drove to a nearby town and took 2 days just for me and my thoughts. I called in sick from work and I told my wife that I was visiting a cousin. I then read all the comments you guys had for me. I really wanted to reply to some, but the thread was locked. But I nevertheless read each one and it was a lot of mixed advice. Everyone was advising me to talk to her, but everyone had different views on what to say to her. Some said to just ask for a divorce. Some said ask her what she meant. Some defended her and told me that I misunderstood everything. I decided to go for the middle option. Yesterday, I finally confronted her about it. I walked in and she came up to me for our hug, but I didn't really give one back. She asked me what was wrong and I told her we had to talk. I sat her down. She could tell I was sad and worried, and I asked her if she was happy with me. She said of course she was. I asked her if she loved me, and if she had done so through the entire course of our relationship. She was confused and said of course she did, and asked me where this was coming from. I told her that I heard her with her friends a few days ago. I heard how she was willing to leave me after 4 years to be with her ex, and how she claimed to have settled for me. She teared up and said she didn't mean it like that, to which I asked how she meant it. She said that by settled for, she didn't mean she thought she could do better and was dating down, but that she made up her mind to stay with me because I was the better person. I told her that 4 years into our relationship, there shouldn't have been a question in the first place, and brought up the fact that she said she had a bag packed. She started crying and said that that was an exaggeration on her part, that she only considered it, and that it was in a moment of weakness when we were having a fight and were briefly on break. Her ex called her because he heard about our fight through a friend, and they spoke on the phone for about an hour, in which she flirted with her, put me down, and offered to show her the world. She said she had a choice between going with her ex or reconciling with me, and she chose me because she loved me and always will. She said that 4 years ago she was a weaker person, that I made her stronger and better. I then brought up the fact that she said she regretted it but hadn't done so recently. I asked her what she meant by recently. She said that she regretted her choice for only a month after the offer was made because she had thoughts about what could have been, but stopped when she realized she had the best moments of her life with me. I asked her if anything happened between her and anyone else through the course of our relationship. relationship, to which she said that she never cheated on me and never will. And I believe her. We were both crying at this stage and we just hugged and sat together. She apologized for what she said and for what she was like 5 years ago. I apologized for listening in on a private conversation without telling her and for doubting that she loved me. I'm really happy that it was nothing but a misunderstanding, and I'm glad we were able to come out stronger. Some people mentioned that I should get a DNA test for the kids, but we don't have any kids, so that's not a problem. Also, she mentioned possibly having survivor's guilt, so we're going to look into that too. So what do you think we should do from here? I know most people think that this is a happy ending and everything is fine and the OP is happy with the outcome as well, but something about this doesn't feel right to me. It sounds like she's an expert in knowing what he would want her to say, and she just said the perfect combination of words to disarm him, but not really answer anything. The real answer in plain English would be, I wasn't sure about you, I was into him, but I chose you. And maybe that's what some of you got out of her explanation, but that's not really what I got from it. Somebody else who sees it a little bit differently said, this is not a good update, OP. You have effectively chosen to let your wife control the narrative without any supporting evidence, and you've chosen to swallow your suspicions in order to keep up the facade of having a good marriage. Your wife's story is vague and extremely suspect. You have decided to not look deeply into this or question her much in the hopes of pretending the whole thing never happened, but it's just rug sweeping, and I have to wonder how long before those bags of hers will get packed for someone else. There's not much point saying anything else because you don't seem like you take on board anything that hints your wife might have been less than honest with you instead of looking at things analytically. I'll just urge caution anyway because I fear things will not end well. And to counter that, maybe she is completely telling the truth as she sees it, and the OP is completely satisfied with her answer in every way. But the question I have is, what if he never found this out? She just never ever would have told him? I mean, this is not a minor thing. This is pretty huge. Would you yourself be okay with knowing the person you were with for 9 years was about to leave you, and literally or metaphorically, either one had their bags packed ready to go out the door, and the way they rationalized their decision was because they settled for you? Something about that just doesn't sit right, but maybe you see this completely differently. Let me know how you interpret the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. An entitled mom and her son eat poisonous berries despite my warning signs. I'm not sure if this is entitled per se or just plain stupidity, but this happened yesterday morning. So for some background, I live in Southern California, very close to the beach. Needless to say, I encounter a lot of locals and tourists. On the right side of my property across the street, there are shops, a cafe, and a bus stop. Now, on my property, I have a hollyberry bush, which is poisonous. Now, they taste like cherries and have a cinnamon-like aftertaste. So a person that doesn't know about the plant would have no idea of this. The side effects of the berries are nausea, disorientation, diarrhea, vomiting, and severe stomach cramps. Due to my house being on the historic registry and nature protection laws, I can't just remove the bush because some of the birds pick at it and eat from it. I know the berries and leaves aren't poisonous to some species of birds and other critters like squirrels and chipmunks. Anyway, because of this, I have 2 signs that say, "Do not eat" and "Danger" with a skull and crossbones. The fact that I have a sign with "Danger" that has a hazard skull and bones deter most people, except for this persistent mom and her boy last morning. So it's around 10:30 a.m. and I take my trash out. This mom, who looked about 40 years old, had 2 kids with her, a teen girl who's between 14 and 16 maybe, and a little boy who is between 6 and 8 years old. The mom and the boy are the entitled/stupid ones here. The teen girl was actually nice. The entitled boy says,
"Oh, mommy, look, they're berries." "Wow, I didn't realize berries grow here. Let's get some."
I ask her to read the signs that say don't eat them. She scoffs and says,
It's not like you need all these berries. You should be nice and give them to my kids. Don't be greedy." "Mommy, when are we going to have the berries?" "Right now." "Teen girl, do you want any?"
No, Mom, I think they're..." She gets cut off by the mom, who says,
"Okay then."
Because I'm older, I couldn't run fast enough to catch them. The mom and son broke a branch off the berry bush. Then they started running and scarfing down the berries and went to the bus stop across the street with the teen girl reluctantly following. I was yelling to get her attention for nearly 20 minutes, but after the mom and the boy started getting overly sweaty and acting weird, the teen came to talk to me. She said,
Sir, what's wrong with them?"
"Those berries are poisonous. I tried to warn your mom and your brother, but it's too late." The teen started to cry, thinking that they were going to die. I comforted her, saying they'll live, but they're just going to be very, very sick. Soon after, I went to my house to get seltzer tablets and water bottles to help, but By the time I came back, both the mom and the son finished all the berries, and the boy threw up all over his shirt. The mom came back with obvious signs of throwing up herself and to yell at me when I pointed to the signs that said danger and do not eat, and that this was her fault. She flipped the bird and then left. The teen just said, "Sorry." I gave her the seltzer tablets and she went into the cafe to get paper towels to clean up her brother, but by the time she came back, the mom vomited too. They all got on the bus and I haven't seen them since. There's a little update from the future. There's been a lot of people asking me about the berries in my house. So I bought my house 50 years ago and I didn't know that the berries were poisonous. Despite me having signs and warning people for all these years, people still managed to eat them. And yes, many people have gotten sick, but due to my house being on the historic registry, I can't remove the bush. So I have to do the best I can do to warn others, but people still eat them. So could I have done something more? Am I the jerk? So basically buying this house is like buying a part-time job. You just have to keep constantly watching to make sure people don't eat your berries all the time. And I'm guessing it's not for legal reasons because you have signs that say don't eat these berries. So I doubt that they would be able to sue you. Maybe some of you guys would know about that. But the OP obviously cares even if they don't get along with every single person that tries to come and eat the berries. I mean, the OP here actually brought out the water and the seltzer tablets even when the mom and her kid just took off with a branch and told her, it's not like you need all these berries, you should be nice and give them to my kids, don't be greedy. As if this was something that had to do with being greedy. No matter what the mom thinks, the mom knew that the OP here, the original poster, owned this bush. And the owner of this bush was saying don't eat these berries, but she decided to do it anyway because she assumed the reason the owner was saying no is because she wanted more berries for herself. This is such a ridiculous situation, but let me know how you would handle this situation down below and jerk or not a jerk and why. My girlfriend got implants and her entire personality changed, and I no longer feel attracted to her in the same way I was before the surgery. Here's what happened. As the title says, my girlfriend and fiance of 2.5 years recently got breast enhancement surgery. She's been saying she wanted to do it ever since we first began dating, and while I expressed to her I didn't think it was necessary, I love the way she looked before, I always said I would support whatever decision she made because it's her body and she's the one who has to live in it. About a year ago, her mother died after a long battle with cancer, in which she actually went into remission after a double mastectomy, but then the cancer eventually came back and metastasized to her pancreas. It was a horribly painful and unpleasant experience for everyone in her family. I had met my girlfriend after her mom went into remission and after the surgery, so I wasn't there with her for the first battle, which from what I've heard was very traumatic and painful in its own way. When her mother passed, she inherited a fairly large sum of money. Nothing crazy, but enough to put a down payment on a house and finally pay for the surgery she wanted. When she told me she had made the appointment to meet with a plastic surgeon, I was supportive, but again reinforced that I love the way she looked now and suggested that maybe her desire to do this now was connected to her grief because of her mother passing. She pretty much dismissed that notion since she said she wanted to get implants since she was in high school before her mom ever had cancer or the mastectomy. Fair enough. Fast forward about 6 months ago to the surgery and it goes off without a hitch. Because she was recovering for about a month or so, I didn't really see the finished product right away, and then when I did, they were much bigger than I expected. She told me that there was still swelling and that they would go down and it would look more natural. And the swelling did go down, but they never really looked natural to me. Maybe because I was just so accustomed to the way they looked before the surgery that I am having trouble seeing them any other way. For the past few months, our bedroom life has been okay, but it definitely has dwindled down a bit. We couldn't really do the deed while she was recovering, and after she was feeling up to it, we overcompensated a bit by doing it a lot, but it was still before I had an idea of what they looked like, since when we did it, she would still be in a sports bra and or baggy t-shirt that stayed on during, and I was very cautious not to grab at them or anything since they were still tender for so long after. Eventually, she completely recovered, and immediately I wasn't thrilled, but I lied and said I thought they looked great. The thing is, I don't hate them or anything. The part where I started losing attraction to her has been that since she got the surgery, she's getting a lot more attention from random strangers, which I've never minded. She's gotten attention from strangers in the past too. She's a beautiful woman now and before, but since the surgery, she seems so much more receptive to the attention that it just becomes a total turnoff for me. I didn't initially bring it up because I thought maybe I was just being paranoid, and even if I wasn't, it would likely be regarded that way and dismissed either way. But eventually I started to make little comments here and there when she would flirt back with the delivery guy or whatever. Nothing terrible, but like, not sure he needs a tip after all, or something like that. She got annoyed, and eventually I did bring up my discomfort, and she did what I assumed she would, which was accuse me of being paranoid and reading into things, and saying that what I thought was happening was not happening. And then a couple of weeks ago, I found out that while out with her friends, she was convinced to enter a wet t-shirt contest. A friend of mine happened to be at the bar they were at and just sent me a text telling me how great my girlfriend's honkers looked. He was joking and later said he framed it that way because he was uncomfortable letting me know, but knew he needed to let me know in case I wasn't aware. When I confronted her about it, she didn't understand why I was upset, which is symptomatic of this entire personality change that she seems to have undergone since the procedure. I tried to explain that if she had told me that was happening, I probably would have been fine, but the secrecy and just her general dismissiveness of my concerns and enjoying the extra attention was hurtful. She seemed to think that because she won the wet t-shirt contest, I should just be okay with it and that I am lucky to have her. This simply isn't the person I fell in love with. I know I might be overreacting a bit, but I didn't love how the surgery turned out to begin with, and now this entire personality shift has been jarring enough to make me lose interest in being intimate with her at all. For the past 2 weeks, we've only done the deed twice, and I've even had to reject her advances. I tried to be as nice as possible, but when I tell her I'm not in the mood, she now gets very angry and frustrated and kind of throws mini tantrums, which is also very new. Like she thinks she's doing me a favor by even wanting to do it with me, and I am now somehow ungrateful. I've had some of my friends, male and female alike, mimic this kind of sentiment when I've tried to discuss it, hence bringing it up here. I believe the person I fell in love with is still there somewhere, but I might just be kidding myself. I'm at the point where I want to suggest couples counseling, but the one time I remotely touched on the subject, she was not receptive to the idea. I don't know what else to do though. She's like a completely different person now, and I don't like that person very much. Jumping into the future, there is an update. After the post, I was still uncertain as to what to do. I didn't want to spring anything on her as I felt from her perspective it might seem like my frustrations and concerns were coming out of nowhere unless she provoked something, and I didn't want to bring up the past after as much time had already gone by because it felt pretty petty of me to do so. I guess what I didn't realize at the time is that I had become pretty distant and terse with her, which she brought up pretty quickly, as well as the fact that I was no longer interested in initiating anything with her and completely unreceptive to any advances that she made. I told her flat out that her personality had completely changed, and I was having a lot of second thoughts about the relationship. She got very upset and asked me why I didn't mention anything. I told her that I had tried to multiple times, and she was completely dismissive of it and accused me of being jealous or paranoid. I asked her, when have I ever been either of those things throughout our relationship? And she had to admit that I have never been a jealous or paranoid person in the past. While she admitted that, she still said that she felt her personality was still the same, and that while she may not know the reason for my perception, it was still wrong. She apologized for accusing me of being jealous, but said I'm wrong. It was weird because it felt like suddenly it got turned on me and that somehow it was all on me. I was pretty stunned and felt like again she was being dismissive of my viewpoints. She said she didn't know what else to say. We agreed to put a pin in it for the night as I was kind of speechless, and talking to her felt a bit like talking to a wall anyhow. That night she tried to initiate again and I said no. I kind of snapped at her. I was quite flummoxed and said something to the effect of, "Wow, you didn't hear a single word I said tonight, did you?" And apparently that broke her. She became so aggressive and hostile in a way that I had never experienced before. She was hysterical, screaming, thrashing, throwing the pillows and bedding around wildly, knocked over a lamp that broke, and that didn't slow her down. Then she started pushing me and telling me to get the heck out and that she never wants to see me again. At first I was resistant, pleading with her to calm her down, but she was just getting more and more aggressive. So I grabbed my wallet and my keys. I ran out to my car in my socks and boxers. I could still hear her slamming doors from inside of my car outside of our house, her house. I just drove around all night thinking. I was shaking. I was genuinely scared. I was angry. I think I was in shock. I didn't have my phone, so I couldn't call a friend or my parents to go to their house, and I didn't want to show up in the middle of the night under these circumstances anyway. I just drove around all night and I didn't sleep. I waited until about 8 a.m. to go back to the house, which was around when she would leave to go to work, but her car was still there. So I drove and got breakfast and coffee at a drive-thru, and when I came back an hour later, she had eventually left. By this point, I'm feeling pretty calm. I go inside to grab some of my things and the entire living room is just a mess. Chairs tipped over, the coffee table completely shifted out of place, a plant ripped from a pot with dirt everywhere. You can tell she's trying to clean it up a little, but didn't get very far. I went to our bedroom where my phone and my clothes were, and in the middle of the hallway, on the way to the bedroom, was a pile of all of my things, including my phone, which had a broken screen. Fortunately, it was still functioning, so I called into work and I spent the next 4 to 5 hours packing up a bunch of my stuff and loading it into my car. I also called a friend of mine and drove over to his house. He said I could crash with him for a bit while I figure out what to do next. Later that day, I sent her a text saying we should talk, and she responded with, there was nothing to talk about, and that she thinks it would be better for both of us if I find somewhere else to stay for the time being. I explained that I had already done so and was staying with my friend, and then she went radio silent. She didn't respond to that or any of the follow-up texts I sent. About a week after all of this, she sent me a text that simply said I need to figure out a time to come and pick up the rest of my things. I asked if she would be there so we could talk, and she said she had nothing to say to me, and I should come and get the rest of my things when she isn't there. So I tried calling her and she didn't answer. I sent her a text asking her if she was done with us, and she said, yes, I thought I made that clear, which maybe she did. I thought it was just an episode and we would at least talk. Later that week, I went and picked up the rest of my things and sent a text saying I left my keys on the counter. She said she was getting the locks changed anyway. I've known this woman for nearly 3 years, and all of this along the way is new. She was always communicative and rarely hostile. She might pout or be passive aggressive, but this felt like a full-blown tantrum. She was seething like a feral animal or something. She was completely unapologetic and calculatingly cold in a way that she'd never been before. A few weeks later, after moving into my own apartment, I found out that she was already seeing someone new. I don't know if she started seeing him while we were together. It wouldn't shock me. At some point in the last year, she just stopped respecting me. And when I think back, there were probably signs before the surgery, maybe even wanting to get the surgery. I don't know. The whole thing feels like such a blur. I think I may have been in denial for a while. Maybe I'm just telling myself that now to feel better about it. I have not heard from her in weeks, and I have not tried to contact her on my end either. I did receive a missed call from her in the middle of the night about a week ago, but there was no message or text, and I didn't bother following up to see what she wanted. I'm not ready to speak with her again. I don't know when or if I'll ever be. The last couple of weeks with her after the big blow up were the worst days of my life. I've never felt so meaningless or disregarded, and she was the person who I trusted most in the world at one point. Anyway, sorry this isn't a more positive update, but a few people had asked. I would have posted it sooner, but it's taken me a while to be comfortable talking about what happened. I still get upset thinking about it. I'm hoping that writing it out would help, but honestly, I'm just sad and upset again right now. Fortunately, I have my whole life ahead of me, and I am fortunate in that I still have plenty going for me. I definitely feel more cynical now than I did before, which sucks, but I'm hoping that passes. Jumping into the future, there is a final update. I can't imagine many people care, but I got a lot of requests for an update, so here it is for those who care. My ex and I are now friends. She actually finally got into therapy and has really been more like the person I thought I knew. She said she realized that she was acting out because her mom died, which I tried to discuss with her, and also there were some issues in our relationship I was unaware of, which admittedly I did not try to discuss because I was unaware of them. She expressed to me that because of my personality, which is pretty even-keeled and placid, it can come off as indifferent or even judging. For a while, she was feeling like I didn't find her attractive anymore, which was pretty surprising to me because I always made an effort to let her know how gorgeous I thought she was, but I guess my behavior didn't always convey it even if my words did, which is on me and something I have discussed in therapy. Being more enthusiastic or letting people know how much I appreciate them and catering it to them specifically, individually, and her therapist helped her realize a lot of what she was going through, which was nice because she essentially said that she forgave me for her reading into essentially the way I am and turning it into a negative as opposed to it just being the way that I am, and in no way a reflection of her or how I felt about her. And I believed her, and I apologize for not making her feel as beautiful as I think she is and generally not being a more present partner. She also apologized for her behavior after her mom died. She actually admitted she was trying to make me jealous, and when it didn't work, she went temporarily insane. insane. She said she felt like she lost me before her mom died, but because we never talked about it, after her mom died, she started acting out and feeling kind of desperate and lost control. I am so grateful for her honesty. I thought I had been going crazy. Ultimately though, neither one of us has a desire to jump back into a relationship with the other. She had brought it up passively as something down the road and in the future, but when I remained silent, she asked if that was something I was hoping for, and I had to be honest. It wasn't. I love her, but the person I fell in love with doesn't exist anymore. I can't see her the same way, and I am quite frankly not in love with the person she is now. Even with everything she is saying, her previous behavior is hard to let go of, let alone ignore entirely. She agreed with me. What a relief. We love each other, but both feel like we need time away from each other and figuring out who we are, and now we can at least be friends. I thought I lost my best friend, and I thought because of all of this that it was gone forever, but I got my best friend back. We're not best friends anymore in the way we were, but when faced with the alternative, it's almost better, because I missed her friendship more than anything, long before everything fell apart. Anyways, things are positive and there's no hate or animosity. I feel terrible for what I put her through, but as my therapist reminds me, it wasn't intentional. At the end of the day, you are only yourself, and people have a choice to live with it or not. He's helped me a ton. So were either of us the jerk with how things were handled? This OP really had to go through it. He somehow was able to keep a level head through such a painful experience, and on top of that, took accountability for every part that he attributed to himself, and even some things that I don't think necessarily he even needed to take accountability for. He seems very accommodating. I think most people wouldn't be able to handle basically getting ghosted by her, not wanting to talk at all other than the text that she sent basically saying to go away and don't be there when I'm home, and then to get hit with the answer of whether or not they're together with, yes, I thought I made that clear, saying that she thought she made it was clear that they're not together, and then come to find out she's already been seeing someone. That seems pretty obvious that the most likely answer here is the entire time that he was staying out of the house that she was already dating during that time, or with whoever she ended up being with. So when her personality changed, her personality really changed. But if she wanted to do that, she should have just been honest and said, I don't want to waste your time, I want to go explore the world, I want to be with other people, and I don't want to hurt you, so I'm going to break up with you, then do all of that. We'll never know for sure what happened, but from the sounds of it, it was somewhat ambiguous, and maybe that was intentional, so that if things didn't work out with this new guy, she could always come back to the OP. But maybe you see the situation totally differently. Let me know how you interpret it down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My greedy stepmother from China married my father to bring her family over, set up their businesses here. Then she stole my inheritance and my family house. Years later, I found out that my girlfriend's brother was dating my ex-stepmom, who had taken everything from me. So I used that as my opportunity to nuke her political career, expose her cheating, and ruin the lives of all her family that set up businesses here because of my father. Here's what happened. Sorry for the grammar, English is my second language after Chinese. My mom died after giving birth to me, so I never knew her. She looks pretty in pictures. Dad says she was a good woman and I believed him. He was a good dad and raised me by himself with the help of my aunt until I was 11. My aunt has her own kids, which are a few years older than me, but we were all friends growing up and still are, which includes my aunt. Like my mom, my aunt is a good woman. My dad worked crazy long hours to provide for me. He owned his own convenience store. He was a manager and cashier for most of the day and had one other employee as his helper. I was just a kid but would also help at the store after school, sweeping and stocking shelves. For the longest time, my dad's helper was a Chinese guy, but then he had to quit because he had to take care of his ailing parents in China. So my dad replaced him with a white guy who did okay for a while, but then he graduated college and moved on. Finally, my dad hired a Chinese woman to be his helper, and this woman would eventually become his second wife and my stepmom. I will call her Barbara, though of course her name isn't actually Barbara. Barbara was only 15 years older than me, so she was a lot younger than my dad, who was 44, and she was about 26. She also didn't speak the same Chinese dialect at first, which was inconvenient for our convenience store because we lived in a Chinese part of town where most of the customers were Chinese Mandarin, and only once in a while white or black people come in, so her English wasn't such an advantage. Barbara was nice to me at first, so I thought she was a good person. I wasn't even 12 years old yet when they got married and she moved into our house. From what I know about her, her family is quite wealthy in China, and they paid for a nice wedding and they all came to America for it. My dad was the sort of guy to never let anyone pay his way through, so he kept on working like a maniac every day. Once they got married, Barbara changed, at least towards me. She was no longer big sis like she tried to portray herself when she and my dad were dating, where she treated me as a peer, but now she was super strict and controlling. She no longer let me help out around the shop like before. It's not like Cinderella where the mom would force the kid to do all this work, but she did tend to isolate me from my father. Over the next few years, she convinced my dad to sponsor all sorts of her relatives and friends to come over from China to live in America. He would set up these people with businesses because even though my dad wasn't rich, he was very bright and knew how to make money. They would open little restaurants, dry cleaners, cell phone repair shops, things like that. Pretty much all the little foreign mom and pop shops you see in any small town. My dad helped make those things, except the owners were Chinese guys. Even when I was 17, my dad developed lung cancer due to smoking heavily ever since he was 13. He died only 2 years later at 52. When I was a kid, I always had in mind to one day take over my dad's store when he retired. Now that I was 19, I was still too young to sell liquor, but I thought surely Barbara would let me work in the store now that my dad was gone. No such luck. He had one of her adult cousins take over the store, and the guy hired only his own friends and family to work in it. So the store my dad built from nothing was no longer a part of my life. Barbara also had my dad fix his will so that she got almost all of his money, which again, although he wasn't Bill Gates rich, he had several hundreds of thousands of dollars. I didn't really care about the money. Barbara can have it, but it still sucks that she got all his money and her family is already rich. I think she was just using my dad to transport her clan from China to America, but that's just my theory. All the money in the world cannot pay to bring my dad back, but I'd rather have that than cash, but I digress. However, after saying all that, I will admit my dad set aside a small trust for me that was enough to put me through junior college. Also, the minute I turned 18, Barbara threw me out of the house that my dad bought and paid for with his hard work.
This is not a place for you. You go now. Bye-bye.
She owned it because she was his wife, and now that my dad was dead, Barbara could move her new boyfriend into the house in his place. Her new boyfriend was a big fat scumbag from Taiwan, who from what I hear was a big shot mobster in his home country. But in America, he just played mahjong all day and lived off his wife's money in my dad's house. Honestly, I think he was hanging out in America to avoid gang trouble in Asia. Also, I think my stepmom got on with him because he had connections in China and Taiwan, and maybe some fraud is going on. Before I got kicked out of my dad's house, my stepmom used my dad's money to invest in a couple of apartment buildings. I eventually heard that she was renting out rooms to various traffickers, and basically they were bordellos. This was all stuff I found out later, along with the news that she was not only making big money off the rent, but the traffickers were giving her a kickback on the money they earned. I will say this for Barbara. She is a very beautiful woman physically, and it's easy to see why my father was attracted to her. Though, if I think of her not as my stepmom, she personally does nothing for me. She often got men to do what she wanted because she was pretty. I'm also quite certain that she gave them more than eye candy, but aside from one very important case, I cannot prove it. What was that case? Well, I moved in with my nice aunt who sheltered me while I went to college for a degree in computer engineering. My smaller inheritance paid for a couple of years of school. My aunt was nice to me, and even though she was still taking care of her own children, she had one son who already married and had his own family, but 3 daughters who still lived at home and were unmarried. She didn't ask me for rent. Her own husband had passed away long ago, so I got to play man of the house, taking care of the yard and fixing things like cars and computers while I lived there. After a couple of years, I lose touch with Barbara and just concede that she won. I ended up getting a job at a computer hobby store where I soup up computers to make them go fast. It's a good experience, and though the money isn't so great, at least it is some money, and I am starting to make a name for myself in the world, or at least in our small city. And when I say small city, I really do mean small city. It is even small in the sense that Chinese people in that city tend to live all in one part of it and everyone knows one another. Eventually, I meet my own girlfriend, Kay, who is much the same age as me and going to school to be a nurse. After Kay and I start dating for a few months, I start to meet her family. She knows about my living situation, that I live with my aunt, and that I have a mean stepmom who threw me out of my dad's house, but I never said Barbara's real name before. So I meet Kay's family, and she has an older brother, Mike, who is about 26 years old. Mike is Chinese like all all of us, but he is very heavily tattooed and has spent some time in prison because he was a banger as a teenager and did that time until his early 20s. He worked for a landscaping company cutting grass and all that. He is what we call in our neighborhood a cowboy, but I don't know how accurate that translates in English to what I'm trying to say he is. Well, anyway, after coming over to Kay's house and seeing him around a couple of times, Mike overhears me answer one of Kay's questions about my stepmom, and Barbara's name comes up. Mike said, "Oh, excuse me, May. Hey, OP, did you say Barbara's name? In my neighborhood, everyone calls their little sister May. So I say, yeah, that's my stepmom. Oh, he tells me, no offense, OP, but I'm smashing your stepmom. No way. So he describes how he does a lot of houses in my dad's old neighborhood, and while my stepmom's boyfriend is with his own friends playing mahjong, he, Mike, comes over and Barbara and him do the deed without any protection because she wants a baby and is now like 36 years old and is wanting to go fast, and her boyfriend has baby batter that is too slow. Evidently, Mike does the deed with all sorts of women in the neighborhood, and outside of it too. He brags about all the whites and black and Mexican ladies that he also landscapes. I haven't really thought about my stepmom other than talking about stuff in the past, so it was interesting hearing what she was up to. I mean, other than doing my girlfriend's brother. Mike tells us that Barbara uses her apartment buildings as a giant cat house where pimps set up their women. Barbara never actually told him this, but he deduced it like an Asian thug version of Sherlock Holmes. He says that a lot of people he knew in prison got put in jail that way. Also, that my stepmom was running for a seat on the city council, playing up the fact that she was a hard-working woman of color, blah blah blah, and had aspirations for even higher office. It's clear that she wanted to make herself a little empire. Kay asked her brother if he would help us put my stepmom in jail. She had her account set up, so it was really hard to prove she actually knew exactly what her tenants were doing in her buildings. But if the buildings were shut down, it would at least hurt Barbara's cash flow and put an end to some of the things these women were going through in these buildings. Mike said that he would have kept his mouth shut because he liked that my stepmom was basically showering him with money so that he could keep giving her the D. But since his little sister was asking for help, he was willing to forego the money. I piped up and even offered to pay him, even though no way could I pay as much as Barbara. He said, it's fine, you don't need to pay me anything, but if you hurt my little sister, I'll cut your gonads off. Deal. So our plan that we came up with was that Mike would set up his cell phone in an out-of-sight place in Barbara's room while they did the deed. Mike didn't care about his reputation in America and had plans to leave the country again anyway and go back to China, as his own father had a business opportunity for him there. The idea of being in a video like this didn't bother him at all. Having spent time in jail and also being a part of gang subculture, he also didn't have any trouble scoring illegal substances, and evidently he did these illegal substances with Barbara all the time in her house. So the day he made this explicit tape at her house, he also made sure to show that Barbara was doing illegal substances. He minimized his role so that it appeared that it was Barbara who scored them and was offering them to him. He did make sure, at my suggestion, to have her say in natural conversation what day and what year it was, and that this was her husband's house who passed away, and that her current boyfriend was playing mahjong at a friend's house. Furthermore, Mike added a special touch where in the throes of doing the deed, he made Barbara denounce her Taiwanese boyfriend as a weakling and a fool, not a real man, that only Mike was capable of satisfying her. Really hair-raising stuff. All of it was in Chinese, but that was okay because the audience would also be in Chinese. Mike made sure that the video clearly showed Barbara's face. The video was obviously not professionally made, so thankfully we did not actually have to see any clear private parts, but it was obvious what was going on in the film. All told, the video was 20 minutes long. We edited out most of the graphic portions because they were unimportant really. When I say we, I mean Mike and me, because of course Kay didn't want to look at her own brother in the act. I didn't care to see Barbara either, and thankfully I didn't really have to see any clear picture of her exposed, though it was obviously her and she was obviously exposed. We shaved the video down to the parts where it was clearly showing Barbara's face, her doing illegal substances, talking about illegal substances and offering them to Mike, her mentioning the date, and that this was her husband's house who passed away. them in bed for a few seconds doing the deed, and the funny part where she made fun of her Taiwanese boyfriend. The relevant video clip that we made with all of this was slightly less than 10 seconds long. A few days later, Mike went to China to meet with his parents. A week after that, this is what happened. As politics go, candidates often have to make speeches in front of audiences, and Barbara running for a seat in the city council was no different. Nobody really cares about city council meetings except other politicians and the few people who go to such things. Reading up on her quickly, I learned that Barbara was presenting herself as a woman of high character, a business owner who had set up more than a dozen successful businesses in the area for other immigrants. So basically, she was stealing credit for my father's work. But back to boring political meetings. They're definitely a snoozer, but if something interesting happens, such as the politician saying something Hitler would say, someone getting assassinated, or I don't know, an attractive candidate suddenly randomly appearing in an explicit tape for all to see in real time, news travels fast. So on the day Barbara was making her little speech in front of maybe 100 people at the local hotel conference room, the public was invited. Oh look, her boyfriend, the Mahjong King, was there too. And all of Barbara's cousins that my dad had sponsored to come to America and set up businesses for were there too. Nobody took notice of the young guy in dark sunglasses and beanie sitting in the front row holding a backpack. Even more so, because the room was darkened except for the stage, Barbara was going to be the fourth speaker out of maybe 6. While the first speaker made his speech, I silently slid a bazooka Bluetooth speaker out of my backpack and put it near the stage. Such a speaker is about 20 inches tall, 8 diameter, and when set to a maximum can be quite loud. I tested it at home to be sure. Yep, this would do. As I predicted, the level of excitement for the first 3 speakers was as entertaining as listening to Jessica Simpson try to rap. So it really was a trial to wait for Barbara's turn. She finally gets on stage and she starts talking about being a good family woman and so on. I pull out my smartphone and use its projector app along with a homemade projector box I built at work so that it could make a nice big image on the close behind wall. 10 seconds of Barbara telling us where she was, what date it was, how delicious Molly is, what an inferior man her boyfriend is, and
oh God, Mikey. Do it, Mikey.
her actual throes of passion, nice and loud. Thanks, bazooka speaker. The audience was so stunned. I had time to loop the video and play it again. Barbara is standing there with her mouth open, eyes wide. Someone in the crowd yells out in Chinese, "Hey, that's Mike!" Everyone knows Mike, especially a lot of the ladies. Just as the crowd is starting to reach a crescendo, I grab my speaker and projector box, stuff them into my backpack, and slip out the side door where Kay is waiting with her car running. Before I made this getaway, I made sure to yell out, "This is not a place for you, Barbara. You go now. Bye-bye." I then went to Kay's house and we were so happy we got engaged. By that weekend, I was packed up and moving with Kay to stay with her uncle, who lived in a big house near my new school where I am now finishing my degree. Kay is now a full-time registered nurse. She brings in most of the money, but soon I'll play a bigger role too. From what my aunt tells me, Barbara and her boyfriend broke up, and by broke up, I mean she fled the city because he literally wanted to end her. She lost her bid for the city council, obviously. Thanks to an anonymous tip, her bordello apartments were also shut down. Because of Barbara's shame, lots of her relatives who own businesses, thanks to my dad, lost customers, and a few have already gone out of business. The rest are failing fast. My dad's old house fell into foreclosure, and now a white family lives there. They're the only white people on the block, so Godspeed, round eyes. Barbara's explicit clip was turned into a GIF and made the rounds on tons of people's Facebooks before it got deleted because of community guidelines. Mike shared this trailer all over the internet to people he knows, and in our neighborhood, everyone knows one another. Since it was only a few seconds long, lots of people posted it on their Instagrams before it got deleted. Barbara's life is pretty much nuked. The full-length version got posted to various pay sites, but it hasn't leaked to any free streaming services. This is according to Mike. He never misses an opportunity to make some cash. And hey, yo dad, I forgive you for not leaving me that much other than showing me how to be strong and stand up for myself. That was the best inheritance of all. See you in heaven unless this stunt makes me go to hell instead. Love, OP. So, am I the jerk for getting revenge and nuking Barbara's whole life? So before saying anything else, I gotta say I do not agree with taking private pictures of somebody against their knowledge while they're doing this. in their home and then sharing those pictures no matter what the situation is. I know they were doing it for the sake of revenge here, but to me that's on a whole different level of not okay. I know that you could argue that both situations consist of taking away that person's decision, but there's something more dehumanizing about that to me than taking somebody's money. That said, do I think that Barbara was a good person? Probably not. The way that this was presented was kind of surprising because it seemed like the OP kind of came to peace about this whole situation because he said that she thought she had won, and then it was only reignited when he found out that his girlfriend's boyfriend was dating his stepmom. If that had never happened, would he ever get revenge at all? It sounds like the answer is no. But from the way he describes it, it sounds like he wasn't even that upset about what Barbara had done up until that point. So from a motivation perspective, it's kind of odd. The only explanation that makes sense is that he was downplaying how much he was hurt by Barbara in order to cope with that reality. And then when he finally sees an opportunity to strike back, he takes that first shot that he gets. And that first shot is calculated, orchestrated, and devastating. It basically ruins her life in which she spent all these years marrying his dad and setting up in order to have for herself and her family that she brought over. This character Mike is kind of the wild card of the entire story because without him, none of this would have happened. And the fact that he would even be willing to do this in the first place is kind of surprising, even with the reasoning that he's doing it indirectly for his little sister. Because by doing this, he gives up all the money he's getting from Barbara, and who knows how this could backfire on him. But I guess it didn't matter to him because he was going back to China after all. The way the OP described him was as the Asian thug version of Sherlock Holmes. There was someone that responded to this story that really related to it a lot who said, "Thank you for your story. I hope it's true. I got screwed over pretty hard in my grief when my ex died by his wife, separated. Like you say, all the money in the world can't buy them back, so I did not care about the cash at all when he suddenly passed. He showed me love like I'd always imagined it's supposed to be, and I couldn't have loved him more. I still do. His ex-wife committed perjury, and it seems can still get away with it. It's not right. I would like to see her charged, but I've read it's really hard to prove perjury, and I may need a lawyer, which I can't afford. I do plan to talk to law enforcement, but I get the impression that they won't really care. It feels good to hear that some people don't get away with it. I wish I knew how to make things right, like he was so good at doing." So if you've ever seen a situation like this before, let me know down below, or feel free to submit your story via the link in the description. Also, make sure to subscribe to the second channel because that's where some of my personal stories will be. That's also linked down below in the description. So with all that said in this story, do you think that it was justified or was it going too far? I'm still in the camp that there were a ton of other ways to get revenge that don't involve this type of personal violation, but maybe you see this completely differently. Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. We hired a new guy and we were showing him around the office after his interview. He took the first sip out of a new pot of coffee and tossed it to remake it. He didn't realize who I was as he rose to emperor status before his first day. This is the fastest rise and fall in employment history. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I don't remember this guy's name, but I do remember many of our local staff knew him from the neighborhood. He came in and mentioned Jay said to stop by for an interview. I had answered the door and took him to the office manager. We were a family-owned business and did everything face-to-face, not online. He comes in and meets my office manager. They have a conversation about past work experience, how he operates, etc. I am in the room, just up the steps, making a pot of coffee. I am about 15 to 20 feet from them and I can hear everything. He's a little over the top, but I figure he was trying to impress us. Our office had 3 floors. The top floor was an employee break room, kitchen, shower, and 3 desks/workstations. The manager is happy with what he hears from the guy as far as work goes, tells him he's hired, and tells him he'll show him the office and introduce him to everyone. The coffee was done. I called down to the manager because I knew he'd want a cup, and offered the new guy a cup too. I get a cup, my manager gets a cup, and the new guy gets a cup. The new guy pitches a fit because he doesn't like strong coffee. He pours his out in the sink, gets the pot, and pours that into the sink. The manager looks at me as if to ask which one of us should kill this guy. We're a 24/7 operation, and we all love our coffee. It's our lifeblood, and we all make it the exact same way. In fact, it was the office manager that taught me how to make coffee when I started drinking it. The new guy goes on a rant about how weaker coffee has more caffeine and how things are going to change and he'll teach me the right way to do things. Note, lighter roasts of coffee are higher in caffeine. The longer you roast the coffee beans, the more the caffeine burns out. How strong you brew your coffee is a matter of taste. I let him brew a pot. It looked like lemonade. It had a yellow tint to it and it did not resemble any coffee I've ever seen. The new guy held it up to show us and we could clearly see him through the pot. FYI, I don't care if that's what he liked. It was his condescending attitude that raised flags. He's no longer over the top, he's now obnoxious. My manager tells him he should probably shut up if he really wants the job. He brushes off the manager and tells him we'll learn a lot working with him. I said, "Wanna bet?" He took offense to my tone and laid into me. It ended with a, "Who the F are you?" My manager said, "He's the owner. So, he's your boss." I looked at the manager and told him he's half right. No way do I want this guy working for me, and then I fired him. He was literally hired and fired in less than 15 minutes. We talked about this guy for years. Truth be told, I'm glad we found out he was not a good fit before he caused bad feelings among the crew. So am I the jerk for firing this guy over a pot of coffee? I love how this was set up so that even us, the audience, didn't know that he was the owner until the very last second. A lot of times in stories like this, they'll tell us at the very start, I've owned this business for this many years and then I saw this guy and it was crazy. But this was the perfect setup. And I totally get what he means, that it's not really about the coffee, it's about this guy's attitude. If he's going to act like that and have that much of an ego on day one, it's probably going to bleed into everything else that they do. It sounds like he has some sort of elitist superiority complex. Maybe he thinks that this job is beneath him, because sometimes when people have those type of thoughts, they end up acting like this. It's just pretty wild that during the same time as getting an interview, you would say to somebody, "Who the F are you?" in front of the manager who just gave you the job. A lot of people asked, how did this guy react when he got fired? The original poster said he was speechless and dumbfounded. This was between 1990 and 1995, and he knew my dad's name, but my dad had health issues and retired in 1982. Most people called me by my dad's name or his dad's name, not realizing I wasn't a junior. Maybe that's why he didn't believe that I was the head person in charge. Whatever his issue was, we didn't want a guy like that working for us. He would have poisoned the crew. In response to somebody else asking the exact same question, the original poster responded by saying, "Speechless. He had a deer in the headlights expression. He looked up at the manager who worked for me and asked if this was for real. My manager looked at him and said, 'Yeah, dude, you screwed up royally.'" We are all still friends, and I called the manager at this point when the post first hit Reddit last week. Neither one of us can remember this guy's name, and we both remember a ton of people back to 1986. We figured this guy burned all his local bridges because everyone knew everyone else in our business, and we have never heard about him again. He was working for a competitor in a different city, but my office was about 2 blocks from this guy's house. He would have made it in the shade if he stayed, but alas, 'twas not to be. So let me know how you guys see this. Was firing him justified, or was it going too far, and jerk or not a jerk, and why? Don't forget to subscribe to the second channel where you can hear some of my own personal stories linked down below. Am I the jerk for buying my 5th property rather than helping out my siblings? I'm a 44-year-old male, and for context, even when I was a child, I was incredibly into owning property and designing houses. I work as an architect and I am doing quite well for myself. I bought my first duplex here in Germany a long time ago where I rent out both parts. I then own 2 houses in Italy and 1 house in Spain. 2 of them get rented out as holiday homes, while the last one I use for vacations and rent out a room to a friend of mine. So I have a lot of passive income at the moment, but only after a lot of time and financial investment and refurbishing of these houses has been done. I rent in New York City at the moment as my job has made me move here temporarily. My 48-year-old brother lives in an apartment. He has a family with 2 kids while my wife and I are childless. They are currently looking to purchase a house that fits all of them nicely. While they have found their dream house, it's out of budget for them. Meanwhile, my wife and I are about to buy our 5th house, this time in France. It's going to be one of our largest purchases yet, significantly larger than anything else we have done. It's a great deal on the property, and ideally where my wife and I want to retire. When having a family FaceTime with my siblings and parents, I brought it up. Initially very happy for me, my brother mentioned how he needs a larger home for his family and how I should give up on this opportunity to give him money for his house and spend the rest on refurbishing their new home. I just laughed and flat out said no. I thought this was a joke. This was apparently the wrong move. My entire family turns against me and starts berating me. After 10 minutes of them taking turns telling me to buy my brother a house, I said I'd think about it and left. I am a bit of a pushover, so after talking to my wife, we agreed we could wait and buy their house and rent it out to them at no profit. Apparently, this was insulting to him, having his younger brother be his landlord, and my parents said I should just outright give him the money we have been saving. I told them to piss off, and we started moving forward with the paperwork on our house in France. After talking to my friends, they said I should put my family first, and it's not like we're struggling for money. I want to clarify, my brother does have money for a 4-bedroom house. He isn't broke, just not enough money for his dream house. The dream house is approximately twice as expensive. Jumping into the future, there is an update. My wife and I discussed and thought you guys deserved an update after the clarity I received from my initial post. It feels therapeutic for me. It's been a wild month since then. We took in a lot of your advice regarding the situation, but it ended up being even more chaotic than I expected. Shortly after the post was when the pandemic in New York got worse. I ended up back in Spain. After a conversation with my friend in this post, I decided I had made the right choice. We are moving forward with the house in France currently. Furthermore, we are deciding to sell the 2 Italian homes. We realized we haven't been there ourselves in a long time and it was only being rented out. This decision was twofold. I couldn't get some of the remarks from my last post out of my head, and we wanted some liquidity given the economy. We also decided to only list with local real estate companies. On to my brother. It turned out he wasn't telling us the whole truth. A week after this post, his wife calls me asking me to reconsider. It turns out there was a reason, but my brother didn't want to tell me. So I told her, either he tells me himself or I won't consider anything. A week later, he ends up calling me and tells me everything. It turns out over the last 2 years, he had developed a gambling problem and has taken a noticeable percentage of their savings and blown it on gambling. He said it's less than 40% of their savings, but more than 15% according to him. The dream house was now a lot further out of reach than it was meant to be. Apparently, he has been going to therapy for it for months, but the financial damage did set them back far. My parents knew since the start, and I knew my brother was having marital problems a couple years ago, but I never asked why, as he and his wife were very secretive about details. Turns out this was the problem. Apparently, my parents had told him to ask me, but specifically asked too much from me, so when he rebutted with a smaller ask, I would be more inclined to accept. I had an incredibly harsh conversation with my parents. They feel like I owe the family and it's more their money than mine since they raised me. That's a whole different problem. I told him about the post and he was mad at first but understood my position after reading through it. After a pretty difficult conversation with him, I offered the rent at cost, and once he has built up his savings, we will sell him the house minus any rent he has paid over the time it takes. Some people mention this, rent to own. He happily accepted. Jumping into the future, there's an interesting update. 2 years later. For the most part, the last 2 years have been overall terrible. Pandemic-related issues, but also due to my brother's actions. We ended up selling our business to a different firm in Germany. The pandemic made it difficult for us to set up our sourcing after not working on any projects for a couple months, so we decided to pull the plug when we got an offer. Not really doing anything since that, but we sold it at a profit. So we're going to explore our options for a while. Before we sold it, my brother and his wife ended up divorcing, as did my mother and my father. My father had a gambling addiction when we were younger, and my parents' reaction to the whole mess confused me at the time. It turns out my mother had forced my father to give his entire paycheck and then some, so he had turned to gambling by her suggestion. She is a very holier-than-thou type of person, so to hear that she suggested gambling was insane to me. But it turns out she is inherently very financially abusive. They almost divorced in the past, but she stopped pestering my father as much. He thought she had become better, but it turns out that good things never last. And when my brother started working, she started demanding similar things, and apparently using me as a reference that I too had been sending her money, and my success was driven by the motive to provide for myself and her. I moved abroad quite early, so my one-to-one connection with my brother was limited. Later, she pushed him into gambling and he fell head first. After the house situation, he had stopped for a couple of months but relapsed pretty quickly with local gambling machines, then switched to buying prepaid cards to gamble online again. My father claims to have had no idea it was occurring, but he was plenty happy with vacations paid by a stay-at-home wife. He filed for divorce, but I blame him equally at this point. My brother's wife filed for divorce shortly after it all came to light. Only once he filed did he tell her about our mom and what she was doing. doing. I reached out to him to provide support, but he told me to piss off and never speak to him again. He lives with his girlfriend now and still gambles according to his wife. His wife is still in the house. We have stopped payments. She already worked part-time, but I don't want to cut into her expenses. I guess the only good thing is cheap interest rates on that mortgage. I've cut contact with both my father and my mother, and I guess I have to cut contact with my brother. I feel like my father divorced my mom in hopes that I would take him in. We have since moved into our house here in France. I am still not a fan of French people, but I guess I called this upon myself. My wife is thriving here with a retired/unemployed life. I've mostly been on Reddit or in my workshop. I think a combination of boredom, the pandemic, and my lost faith in my family have left me feeling disenfranchised a bit. I've been wanting to provide an update for about a year since we sold the company, but after the family news, I was always hoping for some good twist or good news here at the end. Reading back my original post, I feel like I had a tendency to focus on my own problems, how everything that's happened to me, and this was one of life's many trials, but now I realize that often you are just a side character in other people's trials, and your success has more to do with the right time and the right place. Anywho, a bit off tangent here, I'm just providing an update for those that wanted it. So, was I the jerk for wanting to buy my 5th property rather than help out my sibling and buy him a house instead? This is a story that I had to do a double take on. I ended up having to reread this after the final update because I don't know if it's just me, but this was written in a confusing way. Sometimes when it sounds like he's referring to the brother, he's referring to the father, and when he's referring to the father, he's referring to the brother. But the big picture point of it is his family has a gambling problem and they want him to help them buy a house. But they do it in kind of a roundabout, manipulative way because, as we end up finding out in one of the updates, they asked the OP for the biggest ask they could, knowing he would say no, so that when they came back and they asked for a smaller ask, he was more inclined to say yes. That is a textbook salesman strategy, and to some extent, it actually seems like it worked for a while. So let me know how you see the situation down below, and if it was you that was about to buy your 5th house and your sibling wanted you to buy them a house, would you do it? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk and why. My ex-fiance wants to meet up after leaving me at the altar 4 years ago. I'm a 29-year-old female, and basically 4 years ago I was supposed to be getting married to my fiance at the time, Jay. Everything was going perfect. I was in my dress, had my makeup on, and taking pictures with my bridesmaids. I was pretty much ready to walk down the aisle when Jay's best man pulled me aside to say that Jay was gone. He had gotten into a car and left, and no one was able to get a hold of him. I came home to our apartment and all of his stuff was gone. He's pretty much been a ghost ever since he left me, and I had to force myself to move on. I ended up going on our honeymoon with my best friend, which was the best decision ever, and then put myself in therapy to heal the horrible trust issues I now have. I haven't heard from him once until today. I guess he got back in contact with an old mutual friend who gave him my number. Jay texted me and said that he wants to meet up and apologize. He says he has a lot to explain to me about what happened that day. I'm torn. I swore Jay was a dead memory, but my curiosity and my desire to get closure with him is pestering me. My current boyfriend supports me, whatever I decide, and I feel out of respect to him and how wonderful he's been, I should just ghost Jay. I'm very confused. I never expected to hear from Jay again. I have no idea what to do. Please help. Jumping into the future, there is an update. First off, I want to thank everyone for the advice. I honestly wrote the post just to vent my frustration and confusion and possibly get some advice. I honestly forgot about the post for a few days until my sister and I were talking, and she mentioned she saw a post from some girl getting left at the altar and her ex showing up again years later. I told her it was mine, and she has been pushing me to do an update. I figure it might be therapeutic to write everything down as a final closing of the J chapter. This all happened 2 weeks ago. Against most of the advice, I did meet up with Jay. As a lot of you said, it did not add any value to my life. Also, it was a part of a 12-step program and he was making amends. We met up at a park and my boyfriend came along with me. He sat off to the side while Jay and I talked. I actually feel stupider after meeting with him. There were a lot of things in our relationship that would have had me out the door if I paid more attention and if he wasn't such a great liar. Basically, for the last year of our relationship, he was doing illegal substances and cheating on me. He had been struggling with his orientation for years, and it's not surprising that it ended up This way now, knowing the truth, his family are incredibly homophobic and horrible people. I wanted nothing to do with them when we were together, but he insisted on them being around just for the big life events, like our wedding. The substances he was taking were just something to get him through the day and act like he was in love with me when he was actually in love with someone else. He had met his boyfriend at work, and I had actually met him a few times when I'd drop off lunch for Jay. When our wedding approached, his boyfriend said he needed to choose, and Jay chose him. So he packed his bags and pretended everything else was great until his boyfriend picked him up and they moved 2 towns over. I asked him if he was still with his boyfriend, and he said no. He thought he could quit the substances once he was free of his family and lying, but he couldn't. His boyfriend found out and left him. He kept going, getting high and hooking up with randoms. One of his regular hookups ended up overdosing while they were asleep in the same bed and died. And then he realized he had to get sober. He apologized for just not being honest with me and leading me on like he did. He wished he could go back and be truthful because I would have been the most accepting of him being gay out of everybody. He said he missed me when he left because even though he didn't love me romantically, I was his best friend. It was a lot to take in. I told him I'm glad he's okay and he's doing better. I'd prefer for us not to have any contact moving forward, but I do forgive him. He said he understood and he was only in town for a few more days and then he'd be gone for good again. I'll admit, when I got home, I cried. My boyfriend held me and ordered me my favorite takeout. He's been really the best and didn't pressure me to talk about anything until I was ready. So if I got anything out of the worst day of my life, it's led me to who I am with now. So considering the circumstances, was Jay the jerk? Even though the OP says that meeting with Jay didn't add any value to her life, I think that if she never would have met with him to find all this out, it probably would have eaten her up for the rest of her life. You don't get left at the altar many times in your life, and she would probably always wonder what happened. Why did that happen? So even though it wasn't some positive beacon of light, at least she knows now, and it's probably a lot easier now to move on from everything. She was really never an option at all to begin with. He just revealed that to her in a very cruel and selfish way. Why wait until the very last second when you've spent all this money, all this time, had all these people gathered, and the person that you care about, even as a best friend, you're about to crush beyond your comprehension? I get that he was in a hard position at the time because of his family and their views, but he ultimately ended up having to make a decision based on his orientation anyway, so why wait until that moment at the altar to do it? Do it the day before you book the wedding venue. As most things in life, I'm sure it's easier said than done, but hopefully the OP is able to recover from this and move on from her life because she sounds like she's in a really happy place with her new guy. So if this was you in this situation, let me know how you would have handled it down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My evil school principal steals money from our school that is supposed to be used to fund our computers and puts that money in his own pocket instead. My dad, my teacher, and I find a way to save the school, working all through spring break to get the computers working. The evil principal announces that his son saved the school and is awarded a scholarship. Then the son breaks into my locker, steals my $2,500 laptop, and deletes all the camera footage evidence. I was at my breaking point. They wasted my entire spring break, stole my laptop, took all the credit from me, and even got my scholarship. So I decided to destroy the lives of everyone involved. I found a way to get the footage, prove the principal had been stealing money, and fought to get the scholarship that was rightfully mine. Here's how I got my revenge. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Written on mobile and I suck at English. This isn't a bully story. This guy never messed with me until this. These people have gone great lengths to find me. Blessed with a common name, I've avoided them. Attempts were made on my life, as in almost ran over. Someone tried to burn our house down, so please understand, I can't post anything that can lead these people to catch any hint as to where I am. I can't risk one of you finding these people and leading them to me. Here's the backstory. A long time ago in the year 2004, I attended a terrible high school. They cut costs on everything, and I mean everything but teacher wages. Only way to keep them. It was an alternative school. My father is in IT, information technology, so I was around computers all my life. This was a known fact. I'd constantly break into the school computers just to play Super Nintendo ROMs. Most of the time, nobody cared, and the computer lab teacher loved me because I'd constantly be repairing for her. Such a sweet lady. Anyway, our school had about 200 computers and they all sucked. Not a single one was good. Well, there was one that I upgraded with my own parts to play games. Insert evil principal and his evil kid, me and Miss B. Evil principal was a cheap man and a jerk. He'd get me to repair electronics for him and not even pay or give me extra credit. The evil kid thought he was good at running computers. He just knew how to format. That's his solution to everything. The CPU running slow format. So the school did well in a statewide test. I'm talking no student got below a 90. And our state is stupid. So we got a huge grant to upgrade our computers. Now, being a cheap man, our teacher uses a sleazy computer shop and has them ordered. I offered to help, but the evil kid was already on the job. They ordered 250 new CPUs, and they are pretty decent. And the evil principal pockets the rest of the money from the fund. This comes up later. So the 250 CPUs are delivered, and Mrs. B and I get to work. Evil principal and the evil kid and their swarm go off for a family vacation as it's spring break. We give up our spring break because he threatens to fire Mrs. B if anything goes wrong. So after 50 CPUs, we were 2 days in. The cheap jerk cut the power to everything that wasn't important. I get to the front office to take a break and decide to boot up one of these bad boys because a secretary still worked and I could start data transferring. What I come to find out is that none of these have the operating system installed on them. That's right, no keys, no operating system, nothing. The cheap jerk elected not to get an operating system because it saved him $100 per machine. That stupid evil jerk. I run to Mrs. B and the fact that I was running meant that she knew something was up. I'm not a runny type of kid. Mrs. B said, "Oh God, what?" I said, "The evil principal didn't buy the operating system keys." She was dumbfounded, got up and exited. Suddenly, the overhead lights came on and we boot 60 CPUs to find not a single one had the operating system installed. Now she panics and she is a by-the-books gal and calls the evil principal. I didn't get to hear much, but I caught the tail end. The evil principal doesn't see this as an emergency. He says, "I was with my family." Mrs. B says, "Sir, this is an emergency. We need the keys." The evil principal says,
"No money for keys, Mrs. B."
"Then no computers. You got yourself 250 paperweights."
"Well, that sounds like a you problem. Buy the keys yourself."
"I can't afford that. You know how much those are."
"Either I have running computers or I'll be buying a new computer teacher by Monday."
Click. Oh, I was pissed because I never saw Mrs. B cry. So I dialed my dad and asked for a solution as he was off, and he said he'd be right down. We set up, and my dad and his 3 IT crew show up. They were pissed too, but they had brewskis and brought the party to school. Now this wasn't a break the law plot. Just have some fun while doing a ton of free work as they were on vacation, and we were going to be here for days. We had 30 disks of unnamed operating systems and my father's corporate key. His work gave him one for home use and he was ready to help. So 3 days later, we had 250 computers set up, wired the whole school, wired network internet, updated all the school software, and installed everything. Brewskis were drunk and we camped in the school. We even watched movies off a projector. It was a blast. The next Monday, everyone came back from vacation to see shiny new computers. We spent the next 2 days assigning logins to the staff and students, teaching others to use the new systems. Mrs. B was hailed as a hero by staff and everyone knew that I helped. But now, the betrayal. You see, Mrs. B's deeds didn't go unnoticed and she was offered a fancy new job. She hated the evil principal and took it. Since she would no longer be teaching and there was only one computer class for stragglers, entitled principal let her go with no shade. 2 weeks before she left, she wrote a letter for a scholarship program the school offered for a tech school in their district. Think a high school for mega nerds. Gave copies to me and evil principal and departed, but in her absence, things started going south. The CPUs needed fixing, and an important note, locker theft started occurring bad. I'm talking so bad the superintendent installed cameras in the locker areas because parents were getting pissed. Now, we hold an assembly to honor the good students and all of that, and it's a well-known fact of my deeds and what I've done. The superintendent is there, the evil principal, evil kid, and his mom were there. My parents didn't have time. It was cool, I didn't care. They get down the list and then the story. How a teacher and a student gave up their vacation. How they rescued the school from an ordering error, lol, and how they wish the teacher was there to honor her, but they can honor the student in her place. I grinned that I was being praised by the man who I hated most. The evil principal said,
Please, a round of applause to evil kid, my son, for saving the school's computers. Your actions have not gone unnoticed, as you've now gotten a full scholarship to the tech school.
I did not hear the rest as my world went red. My friend held me back as to not charge the stage. I was literally going to end those MFs with my bare hands. I do remember the booing. I left for the day. I was livid. They just took credit for my work, stole my scholarship, treated Mrs. B poorly, and thought that I would take it. Revenge wasn't enough. No, I was going to destroy them. Finally, the revenge. Weeks had passed by. I had exactly 1 month to do this with a group of 8 who knew the whole story, and we were literally the 8 smartest students. The Revenge Council was formed. We never met on school grounds, never at the same place twice, followed a strict set of rules, and formed our plan. They only helped me form the plan. I did the legwork. So, Phase 1. Phase 1 was to destroy the evil kid. So I spoke with the super and I told him the story, how I was being robbed. He said I would need proof. That was easy, I already had it, but I needed time, so I said, let me collect it. He said he'd also look into it. I needed him to distract the evil principal. Now, I didn't have access to school functions, but Mrs. B did. I contacted her and explained what happened. She was pissed. She said come in and fix it, but I mentioned I needed to make sure this never happened again. Oh, that laugh of hers was so adorable. I crushed hard on her. She was beautiful. The Revenge Council now had our 9th member. I just needed one more thing, her login, and she happily provided. As long as there was no trail, cameras are now under my control. Now remember the locker thefts? Well, cruising the cameras we confirmed who we all thought the thief was, and guess who the culprit was? The evil kid had used the evil principal's login to access the locker combo sheet and was stealing things. He covered his tracks by deleting the camera footage. Not this time though, not this time. See, my dad had gotten a new laptop and gifted me his old one. This was at the time a $2,500 custom-made laptop. That thing was my main computer for years after this, but I had to risk it. So one day I brought it to school, showed it off, played some heavy graphics games. Evil kid buddied up to me. His eyes lit up. The bait was set. He followed me, talking video games, inviting me to his place for some game sessions as I'm walking up to my locker. He turns around as per school rules not to see my combination, and I place my laptop bag into my locker as my next class is PE, and his was free study. Bait in the trap. He asks,
Aren't you afraid of getting it stolen?
I say, nah, my dad can always get another one from work, plus that, and I point to the camera.
Yeah, those catch everything, plus I heard they caught the thief. Dad says when it's proven he's gonna announce it.
I say, that's a relief. Get with me after school. I live close and we can walk home and game out. I leave the direction of PE, but it's not my class. I had free study. I stealth my way into the math class and tell the teacher I'm updating the CPUs, and he loves me and allows me and starts his class. I watch the cameras. 20 minutes later, the evil kid shows up with a garbage bag, pulls out a notebook, opens my locker, and grabs the laptop. He opens the bag to confirm it, pulls it out and places it in the garbage bag, grabs the mouse and the charger too, returns a laptop bag and leaves. He's wearing gloves. He thinks he's clever. I save the file, wait another 20 minutes, solve a math problem for the class, look to see, and the file for that area is deleted. I hide the copied files and restore them. Hiding was just a backup. I didn't need it, but I wanted a copy, to which I still have to this day. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2. At lunch, I go to the locker and pretend to discover my empty bag. I was with a council member. She runs to grab the school cop and they come. As they are real cops, he radios for a squad car, and I kid you not, 5 cars showed up and they locked it down. They were about to launch a locker search but decided to check the cameras. This was done in the evil principal's office where evil kid happened to be playing games. Evil principal comes in and gives them access. Evil principal says for some reason the files are corrupt. It's a recent problem that we were fixing. Evil kid smirks, and cop says, Alright, guide me to today's cameras and which one is in that area. Evil principal says,
I think cam 6.
that was wrong, of course, and then the entitled kid said,
Now it's cam 9.
You dense jerk. But the cop says, here it is, I found it in the files fine. The evil kid goes white. I wish I could tell you what happens next, but I was excused as they found their culprit. Then I see evil kid and evil principal walk out with 2 police escorts and I'm called back in. I get to see the footage. Cop 3 shows me that evil kid was the one who stole it. I act shocked. I'm good at acting too, sobbing slightly because he was my friend and how could he, etc, etc. 15 minutes later, he walks in and hands me the laptop.
I'm so sorry, please don't press charges. I just wanted to play it. I was gonna put it back.
The cop says it's out of his hands as the value was more than $1,000. I'm afraid it's a felony. Charges will be filed. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. The entitled principal's face sunk. His boy was the school thief. He used his dad's login to get locker combinations and deleted the camera footage. They searched his house and found over $5,000 worth of stolen property in his room. He was in deep. But I wasn't done yet. Now it was evil principal's turn. This phase was not as long as I only had to do one thing. Word hadn't reached school yet. Evil principal covered his son with a coat as he was let out, and I was told not to say a word to anyone, but the superintendent was going to question me on the incident. After a long questioning session, he brings up the proof. I said yes, I had it, and presented a copy of the letter Mrs. B wrote. He reads it, his jaw drops, and he quickly calls her. After a brief phone call, a meeting was set up. Evil principal, the superintendent Chalmer, Mrs. B, and my dad all came. We explained what happened, how I gave up my entire week to save the school's computers, how my father came in and did free work, how this could have been prevented if evil principal wasn't so cheap. But as with all great plans, you can't plan for everything. I expected a sacking, but I got much, much more. You see, it came to light how much the budget was and how much was really spent. So where was the rest? It turns out the evil principal stole it. He skimmed off the top of a lot of the budgets, but he hid this one as he thought he could as well. I don't know the details to that, but one, he used the excuse of the operating system keys. My dad piped up when he tried this. My dad said, I donated my personal corporate key and my super corporate key. It lets me install the operating system as many times as I want. It's how we didn't have to buy 250 keys. He explained to the superintendent and he was shocked. He showed the superintendent proof the key was his and pulled it up on the CPU to show how they were the same. The evil principal had no way out. I said, why didn't tech school get this letter? Evil principal in sob says,
I had to approve all the letters sent on the school's behalf. She no longer works here when it came time.
I said, nonsense. You had 2 weeks to send it. You just wanted to steal my scholarship for your thief of a kid. Every class on that floor heard me shout that. My dad and I left and the superintendent and evil principal were going to talk. My dad said, if my son doesn't get the scholarship by tomorrow, then remove my keys from all the school computers. Needless to say, phase 3 was complete. There were 2 weeks of school left. The scholarship was mine. The whole story came out anyway. It turns out he skimmed all the money he saved, and we spent the next 2 weeks without evil principal in sight. To be honest, I never learned his fate, but I know evil kids. The attack. It was the second last day of school. Evil kid was out on bail or something. He was expelled. He decided to wait for me in the parking lot. As I'm walking out, I see him. He sees me and I think he wants to apologize. Nope. He just stares at me and walks away. I shrug and walk a block away. 2 football jocks were across the street. Then I feel it. A blow to the back of my head. The entitled kid just sucker punched me and had me on the ground. I flipped to my back, and back then, well, it's low, I know, but I fought dirty. As he's on top of me winding up, I plant a knee right into his family jewels, smashing them. I went hard. He falls over and seethes in pain. I'm pissed though, but one of the jocks pulls me off, and I kid you not, the other says, "This is for my dead father's necklace," and stomps on his hand as hard as he could. He passes out and cops show up, the same ones as before, and now he gets the charges of assault and possession of a deadly weapon. He had a blade and was hauled off to ER. The fall caused me to twist an ankle and I was limping. After the dust clears, a few months go by and I find out he gets 10 years and I regret nothing. Should have just not stolen credit from my work. Some of you will say that I went too far. I want you to know you are correct. Do not mess with me. So, am I the jerk for how I got my revenge? That part at the end where the jocks come up and get involved really reminds you of how much this guy has probably stolen. Yeah, it was about $5,000 worth of stuff, but how do you quantify the value of sentimental things like this guy's dead father's necklace? And the whole thing was only possible because his dad was a principal, so he had access to being able to cover his tracks. A normal person wouldn't be able to get away with this. And after all of that, the original poster thought that this guy would somehow come up to him and apologize, which is pretty naive considering how manipulative this guy has been the entire time, even pretending to be his friend and saying, hey, let's go play games after we get out of school. Yeah, right after he steals your laptop from your locker. And then on top of all of that, the principal was embezzling money from the school, the place that usually needs money the most. Schools are generally underfunded and this guy was just skimming off the top, and I wonder where his son learned how to act like that. If the principal was just casually embezzling money this entire time at the expense of the students of this school, you can only imagine what other types of things he does in front of his son, where his son would grow up to do something like this, try and pull off an elaborate regular heist of going into people's lockers and stealing whatever he can find and then covering his tracks by deleting the footage. This was a pretty intense revenge. It was very detailed and specific as to exactly what went down and how it went down. One of the things I'm surprised by is how long the OP let it go after the award was given to the son instead of given to him. Most people wouldn't have had the restraint to devise this entire plan and wait, but the OP did that knowing that the alternative would be futile. There was no point in telling anybody about it because they would just keep asking for proof. And that's pretty much what happened when he did try. It's strange how a lot of times people in positions of power will end up being like this, or it's sort of this paradox because the only reason they're in that position is because of their tendency to be like this. For some people, there's obviously good eggs out there too. It's kind of the same thing as business where the most ruthless survive, and then who do you have at the top of everything? The most ruthless people. As always, if you guys have a story of your own, you're more than welcome to submit it via the link down below. And don't forget to subscribe to the second channel where you can hear some of my personal stories, also linked down below. But let me know how you see this story. What would you have done if you're in this situation? Do you think this was going too far or was it justified? A crazy lady in a grocery store says that she really likes my tote bag and then expects me to give it to her. When I tell her no, she stalks me throughout the store, following me aisle by aisle, staring at me, waiting for me to give her my tote bag. When I leave the store, she gets into her car and tries to follow me home. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. So this happened a couple of days ago, and the more I think about it, the more disturbed I get. For some backstory, I am a huge musical theater nerd, and a few years ago I got to see the Phantom of the Opera in Seattle. And as a souvenir, I bought a tote bag with the play's logo printed all over it that I am still very fond of. Now, the show is playing in the theater in my area, and there's been a lot of local buzz about it. I went to see it this weekend and decided to carry my Phantom tote for a while since my love of the show has been bolstered, and the bag is a great conversation starter for the other theater nerds I may meet in public who recognize the show that my bag references. Now, let's set the stage. A couple days ago, I went to the grocery store near my apartment to stock up on some pretty standard foodstuffs. When I walked in, I saw a cashier that I'm friendly with working at the self-checkout kiosk, so I stopped to talk to him for a few minutes. My bag was hanging over my shoulder within clear view of the doors. After a couple of minutes into my chat, I felt a tap on my shoulder, so I turned around to address whoever was trying to get my attention and found a relatively normal looking woman. Average size, normal clothing, normal hairstyle, nothing to indicate that this woman was a Karen type in any way.
Is that the Phantom of the Opera on your bag?
Me being happy to chat about one of my favorite musicals. Yeah, do you like the show?
It's fine. I took my daughter last weekend to see it at the local theater. She loves musicals.
Me too. I thought it was a really great show. The cast did a really great job, and she cut me off to say,
"Did you buy that bag there? I didn't see that bag at any of the booths."
Actually, I got this in Seattle. I saw the show a few years ago.
Oh, because there weren't any souvenirs of the show my daughter liked. She would love that bag.
Then she looked at me expectantly. Then as I start to realize what she wants, I say, I'm sorry your daughter didn't find any keepsakes that she wanted.
She was so disappointed. She didn't have any anything to remember the show by. She would love your bag. Love it.
Well, I know. I love this bag. I hope next time your daughter sees a show, she finds a souvenir she likes. I'm pretty nervous to this point because I'm very non-confrontational, and I've read plenty to know entitled parents like causing scenes. I grip my bag very tightly, trying to hold it against my body with my elbow and with both hands tightly on the straps. I tell her, I've got to go do my shopping now, excuse me. To my pleasant surprise, she didn't say anything else, so I really thought I'd gotten away without any crazy happening. I grabbed a basket and went to the cereal aisle. As I'm putting Cheerios into my basket, the entitled mother also enters the aisle. She doesn't have a cart or a basket, and she doesn't try to approach me again. Instead, she just stares at me. I decide to try and ignore her and go about my business as usual, grabbing the things on my shopping list. Every aisle I go to, she follows me into. Every single one. Just staring at me. I'm certain she was waiting for me to let my guard down. I go through the self-checkout and she hangs by the discount bread rack nearby, still watching. Knowing she's probably not going to give this up when I leave the store, I flag down my acquaintance working the self-checkout kiosk and tell him I'm pretty sure that the entitled mother is going to follow me to my car. He's wary of her and walks me and my purchases out to the parking lot and doesn't leave until my bags are loaded and I'm in my car with my doors locked. I was still keeping an eye on the entitled mother, and sure enough, she left the store when I did, watching me as I got to my car. I saw her get into her own car, still watching me. My acquaintance who walked me out went back to the store and I was left alone in my vehicle, caught in an awkward staring match with the entitled mother also in her car. She didn't even try to hide the fact that she was watching me. It dawned on me that the entitled mother was likely to follow me home, so instead of taking my usual exit that would take me back to my apartment, I drove over to the exit that turned off onto the more major street. The entitled mother followed me like I expected. I sat there for a couple of minutes at least, waiting. See, there's an intersection at the corner of the grocery store with really long light times, so cars end up lining up a fair amount. I waited until the last possible second until that light turned green and unleashed a wave of cars turning right just before they hit, leaving the entitled mother stranded to wait for them to pass if she wanted to follow me. I drove up the street and got onto the highway, then took the exit for the next neighborhood over and took the back way to my apartment. My car is pretty noticeable. It's bright orange, and I didn't want to take any chances that the entitled mother may recognize my car by going back the way I came. It seems that I successfully ditched her because no one has come banging on my door demanding I give them my phantom tote. Needless to say, I will be leaving that bag at home from now on. An update from the future. For anyone who still cares about this incident, I have news. The entitled mother has been banned from the grocery store. I haven't seen her since, but my acquaintance who works there saw me come in this morning and asked me if I remembered the crazy lady who wanted my bag. It turns out she's been in a few times since she followed me home, but didn't pull anything until last week when she attacked a girl trying to steal her My Neighbor Totoro themed jacket, again claiming her daughter would love it. Police were called. I have no clue if that poor girl is pressing charges, but I hope she is. Either way, the crazy entitled mother is no longer allowed in the store, and us nerds can once again shop there with our nerd merchandise in peace. So in this situation, what would you have done? This is actually kind of a horrifying situation. The mother followed her out of the store, got in the car, and tried to basically chase her car all the way until she went back home to do what? To bang on her door and ask for the tote like the OP suggests here? Or something much more insidious than that? We'll never really know because luckily the OP was able to lose her on the way back home. But that is a pretty serious thing. Somebody trying to follow you home to find out where you live is obviously something to worry about. Somebody being awkward or staring at you in a store is one thing, but she took it to the next level. I wouldn't be surprised if this mother wasn't a mother at all, if she didn't even have a kid and she just becomes fixated on certain things and has this automatic go-to excuse of, my daughter would love it, as a way to try and justify her bizarre behavior. In the update, she attacked the girl in the grocery store because she wanted her Totoro jacket. This lady has some serious issues and it sounds like she can actually be pretty dangerous. So if this happened to you or a loved one, let me know how you would respond down below. Am I the jerk for giving my stepson a 20-minute time limit to return my car before I phone the police? I am a 34-year-old female doctor, and part of my job entails being on call for 1 to 3 nights a week, twice a month. My fiance Dale, who's 30, has been saving with my stepson's mom to buy him a car for Christmas. My stepson Rex is 16, and he has a license already but always has to borrow his mom's station station wagon or his dad's beat-up pickup truck. His mom's car is lame and embarrassing, and his dad's car can only hold one passenger, not practical for a teen. On to the main conflict. Rex texted me yesterday around 12 if he could borrow my car after school. His friends wanted to go to the mall, but the bus route is too long. Could they borrow my car? I texted back a sorry, but no, I'm on call again. Can you ask your mom? He says no. I told him sorry, but my answer is still no. I'm sure you will find a solution. Ask your friends and you can all figure it out. If you see where this is going, you are less shocked than I am. I was up in my home office, the room where I keep my Switch, my sewing machine, and my laptop, so not an official office, when I heard Rex and his friends downstairs after school. I was going to see if they needed anything, but they left after a few minutes. An hour later, I went to the kitchen cleaning up the empty bottles and wrappers from their snacks. I saw the spot where I left my keys empty. I began to panic. First, I bolted to the door. My car was gone. Immediately, I dialed my stepson. He picks up and it's obvious he's in a mall store that plays loud music. I told him to get his butt home now. He laughed and said that I am not his mom. He'll be home whenever he pleases. I am not proud, but I told him that he has 20 minutes to get home or I will call the police and report my car stolen. Rex panics and said that he couldn't find all his friends and drive home in 20 minutes. I told him tough crap. 10 minutes later, I get a text that he is in the mall parking lot and will be home soon. I phoned Rex's mother and informed her of his stunt. She was madder than me when I told her that I was on call. She apologized and promised to talk with Rex and Dale ASAP. Rex came in, threw my keys, and locked himself in his room. Dale finally came home around 8 and said that he had been on the phone with his ex. He demanded to know why I punished his son. I put my foot down and I explained, I am on call. That means I need my car. Rex stole my car. Dale disagrees. His ex agrees with me and decided she will not be buying Rex a car anytime soon due to his entitlement. Dale thinks that I am making a big deal out of nothing. I didn't end up going into work, so why did I have to threaten Rex? I have only gone in twice this year while on call. Just because nothing happens doesn't mean that I am always clear. Rex is now grounded. My fiance barely speaks to me, asks me when I'm going in today, and if I will apologize. I am not budging, and I am still pissed that he doesn't get it. For some additional information, Dale is 30 years old, not 29, but yes, he was 14 years old when Rex was born. Don't get hung up on this. This isn't about teen parents. Rex's mom was 15 when they had him and is the best mom if you ask me. She is who introduced me to Dale. I am going to have a very frank discussion with Dale tonight. Rex is with his mom, so he won't be in the middle or get involved. The kid still wouldn't look at me and called me a B who won't let him get his own car now. More of the story is explained via responses to comments. So here are a few of the OP's responses. You think I could have ruined my stepson's life? I could have lost my job because of his selfish actions. If I am on call and don't respond, someone might die. Rex's self-centered attitude could have caused way more harm than he realizes. He thinks that I have it easy, sitting around waiting for work to call me in. It is not easy. I am constantly glued to my phone to make sure that I don't miss a call. I cannot relax on these days. I am not off or on vacation. I have to be ready to drop everything, change into my scrubs, and be out of the house within minutes. So when I noticed my car was missing, I could do absolutely nothing. In my head, I was jobless with an oncoming lawsuit. You think that this was just a teenage rebellious stunt? It was Rex being an entitled little jerk. And you defend his actions, probably because you are his age and don't understand real life experience. So your comments are nothing but useless garbage to me. Go bother someone else. Jumping into the future, there is an update. So apparently, Dale reads through this subreddit on his work breaks. He texted me a link to my post during his dinner break. A short time later, I received a call from Rex's mom, who said that Dale called her and ranted about how I made him look bad online. She told him that she didn't give a care because he did not react the way that a good parent should. Dale was so furious that he told her that he would be calling his mother to see if someone actually cared about his feelings. Dale's mother handed his butt back to him good and reiterated to Dale that he was not an active part of his son's life until he was 6, so he has no leg to stand on. Dale tried to complain about how everyone was being unfair to him. She shut him up and told him that his son did something wrong, and this is not about punishing him for being a bad father. Dale returned home a little while ago, about an hour earlier than he usually does. He looked defeated, but he was still short with me. He said that he was disappointed that I posted, and now everyone who knows will think he's a joke and a bad father. I didn't think this conversation would end up with my ending the engagement argument and the relationship, but it did. The house is all in my name, so Dale is packing up his stuff and crawling back to his mom's house. The wedding date wasn't set, so no money or time lost there. Dale said so many things that I don't even want to write down. This is not the man who I have known for 4 years, and I am honestly shocked at how selfish he is. He said my doctor money would have to buy Rex a car to make up for all of the hard feelings. I am astonished at how delusional he is. I am done with this account and I will not be returning. And one last thing to add. The fact that he wasn't in Rex's life until age 6 was a huge red flag to me. He never mentioned it to me and refused to admit that it was a big deal during the argument we had when he came home. So now that you know everything, was I the jerk for giving my stepson a 20-minute time limit to return my car before I phoned the police? Based on that last comment that Dale made about her using her doctor money to buy him a car to make up for all the hard feelings, really makes it seem like deep down Dale resents her for being a doctor and having money that isn't being spent on him or Rex. How is there any interpretation that what Rex did was okay in Dale's mind? If they were going the route that Dale was saying and not punishing him and not saying anything to him, then Rex would think it was okay to just steal somebody's car. And in this case, it was particularly serious because it wasn't just anyone's car, it was a doctor who was on call. What if somebody actually did die? What if he decided to go an hour away? They called her to come in to save somebody's life. She said, okay, I'll be there, went out to the garage and found that there was no car, and then the person died. The severity of the situation isn't lessened because she didn't happen to be called that day. And if they did think that it wasn't that serious because she wasn't called that day, and then Rex thought it was okay to just take the car whenever he wanted, eventually there would be a day that would come that she would be called in and the car wouldn't be there. So either way, you're reinforcing terrible behavior that does have real life consequences to other people. That aspect of this story makes me think of those thought experiments where you give somebody a box and in that box is a red button, and every time you push that button you get $1,000, but every time you push that button somebody that you don't know will die somewhere. So the question is, how many times do you push that button? 0 times or enough times to get a few $1,000,000? I think the reason why it didn't resonate with Rex as much is because the people that could potentially be in a life-threatening situation, they're out of sight, out of mind for him, so they don't really mean anything to him in that moment. But let me know how you see this whole situation down below. What would you do, and jerk or not a jerk, and why? I walked in on my husband doing the deed with his partner, and I'm happy I did. So about a year ago, Matthew, my husband who's 39, started saying that he wanted us to open up our marriage. His reasoning was that he was no longer attracted to me because I'm too loosey-goosey. He didn't want us to get a divorce because he still loved me. He insisted that we continue being a happy couple that did not act in the bedroom with one another. We would have our needs met by someone who we would/could consider to be our other partner. I was initially hurt by this because when he explained his reasoning, he didn't miss a beat when insulting me. I was no longer attractive to him because I aged. I'm currently 34 years old. I agreed to open the marriage because I love him and I didn't want to lose him. A brief set of the rules we agreed on once we found a partner. We would have to introduce our partners to each other. My husband introduces his partner to me and vice versa. We can do the deed with other people, but in order for it to be considered okay, we'll have to tell each other about it. If we get into that sort of relationship with someone, we must get tested regularly. We don't do the deed with our partner in our home. We can build emotional relationships with someone, but can't be taken as far as love. We show our partners the rules and explain our boundaries. We do not call our partners pet names. My husband and I must come home to each other every night, sleep in the same bed, wake up together. Typical marriage, just without the friskiness. We have more rules, but I just wanted to state the main ones. A couple weeks after Matthew insisted we open our marriage, he brought home his partner, Jamie. Jamie is so pretty, like an angel. A fresh-faced, beautiful boy with the uttermost perfect smile, the literal definition of youth. I had never been more intimidated in my life. The introduction was so embarrassing. I had no idea what to say and I just wanted to cry. I literally witnessed my husband's type change in front of my eyes. Jamie and I are complete opposites, physically and personality-wise. Now, on to the story. Yesterday I came home on my lunch break to take a quick nap before returning to work and came home to find my husband and Jamie doing the deed. I was shocked and I didn't really even know what to do, so I just left and went back to work. I honestly wasn't even tired anymore. As I was walking into work, I saw that I was being bombarded with texts and calls from them both, so I just turned my phone off. I got out of work around 9 p.m., but I didn't want to go home. I went to a movie and just drove around after. I fell asleep on the side of the road and returned home at 8 a.m. this morning to get ready for work. When I walked in, I saw Matthew and Jamie at the table. Jamie looked sad while Matthew looked pissed. I told them good morning and went and got ready for work. Matthew followed me yelling, saying that what I did was wrong, and my reaction was completely uncalled for. He told me that I was being over dramatic and had him up all night worried because I wanted to act like a child. I don't know what came over me, but I stopped him mid-sentence and asked for a divorce. You don't love me anymore, and I don't want to love you. I'm so lonely, and I have never had anyone nitpick my appearance more than you. If you aren't attracted to me, then marry someone you are attracted to. I want a divorce. He looked shocked and told me that I didn't know what I was saying and that I was just tired. When he tried walking me to the bed, I got really mad. I smacked his hand away and left again. This was a breakthrough for me. I usually let people walk all over me, but I didn't let him do it again today. I didn't want the open marriage, and I don't want someone who puts me second. Was I the jerk? As a whole, everything here just sounds so sad. The OP has really been putting up with something that they didn't want to deal with this entire time, but luckily they were able to stand up for themselves, even if it took a really long time to do so, and say what they did or did not want. It kind of sounds like something broke inside the OP when this all happened, because it was almost automatic, the response of, I want a divorce, you don't love me anymore, and I don't want to love you. The husband here knew what their rules were, and then he decided to break them and then try to blame it on the OP, and then say that the OP was acting like a child and over dramatic and other names. So let me know how you would handle a situation like this down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. A Karen thinks that I corrupted her son and made him become trans. Then she expects me to financially compensate her because of this, due to me corrupting her child to become trans. She then tries to steal my ID and run off with it. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Obligatory English is not my first language, and this story takes place in Mexico City. A bit of backstory to the events. I am a transgender man. I had my top surgery a little over a year ago. Yay. However, for personal and medical reasons, I decided not to go through HRT, hormone replacement therapy. Because of that, and the fact that my height is around 1.52 meters, which is 4'9", I am stuck as being perceived as a teen/young adult, even though I'm 35 years old. So now on to the story. I was hanging out at my favorite coffee shop. I always stay on the smoking area as I am, a smoker. Anyways, our laws over here state that to be able to stay in the smoking area, you need to be at least the age to smoke, which is 18. Keep in mind though, this law is not as harsh and as strict in other places like the United States. A bit relevant also, I have been a regular at this coffee place for at least 10 years. I know most of the waiters by name. Karen enters with a kid around the age of 5 and invades 2 tables, which is a bit rude since the smoke area only has 6 tables, but whatever. One for her and the other for her son, who proceeds to take out some crayons and a coloring book. I ignore all this as I am lost in the book that I'm reading. At this point, I do something as crazy as light a smoke in the smoking area, and a few seconds later, I hear the dreaded sound of Karen clearing her throat. I ignore her, and the next exchange occurs.
Hey, young man, listen to me.
Me being annoyed that my reading was interrupted. Yeah?
Don't you think it's a bit rude that you are blowing smoke all over my son?
I point to the big sign on the wall that says smoking area, 18 and over only.
Do you even know how to talk? Are you an R-word? Answer me. You are way too young to be smoking anyways.
Whatever, lady. I proceed to take my headphones out of my backpack and plug them in. Karen keeps speaking, but by the miracle of technology, I can't make out a word she says. So I figured that was all. A few minutes later, I noticed some commotion around me and again hear the sound of dear Karen's banshee howls. I look up and see Karen arguing with one of the waiters and pointing at me. So of course, I take off my headphones to hear what that was all about.
You have to do something. He's clearly underage and blowing smoke all over my son. Don't think for a second that I won't call the police on this.
The waiter says, ma'am, as I already told you, I don't need to ask that young man's ID as he has been coming here for years.
I don't care. I know the law and I know my rights. He needs to show his ID to stay in the smoking area.
Kind of right, I will concede. But at this point I lose interest and plug myself back into my music. The waiter, after a few futile minutes of arguing with Karen, taps on my shoulder and says, hey man, I'm really sorry. Can you just pull out your ID so this lady can move on? I take my ID out from my back pocket, which is still with my dead name, as even though changing your birth certificate is legal and relatively cheap in Mexico City, I would have to spend around $1,000 $1,000 US to get all my paperwork, education degrees, passport, driver's license, you get my drill, changed, and I spend most of my savings on my surgery. So the waiter tells her, okay, ma'am, you can see here that he has shown me a valid form of identification. Now, you have your kid out of here and...
Let me see that.
She snatches my ID from the waiter's hand.
This is clearly fake. That's a woman's name. How dare you impersonate a woman?
The waiter said, ma'am, the ID is real and you need to give it back to him right now.
No, I am calling the police right now so they can confiscate this and question him about why he is carrying a fake ID. That is a felony.
Then she turned to me and said,
now you have a lot to explain, young man. If only you could have been polite and not smoke all over my son.
Me finally losing my patience, lady, I do not owe you an explanation, but for the sake of ending this and me going back to my book, I am a transgender man. I was born a woman, but I am not one, and my ID still has yet to reflect my gender identity. All settled? Good. Now give me back my ID. Karen, while her face went from normal to red in less than 3 seconds, visibly disturbed, said,
you are a freak. How dare you stand so close to my child? You are going to corrupt him.
Now addressing the waiter,
transgender! How dare you allow transgender freaks in here?
The kid said,
Mommy, what does transgender mean?
Me, after knowing that my afternoon is already spoiled and thinking, what the heck, just let the world burn right now. I say, I am transgender. That means I was born like a girl, but inside, I always knew I am a boy. So I changed my name and how I look, and I am very happy right now. Karen said this, overlapping at the same time while I was speaking to her son, and said,
don't talk to my child! Don't even dare! Mommy, that means I can be a girl?
Now, I don't think the kid is trans or anything. This is actually a pretty common question when explaining to little kids about trans people. For Karen, it took a few seconds to get out of the shock of it all, and she screamed,
how dare you! You are evil and you have just corrupted my son! I demand compensation! My child is ruined!
Now, as you can imagine, by then we had a pretty small crowd watching over, which eventually got the manager's attention. The manager said, what's going on here? Ma'am, I need to ask you to lower your voice and moderate your language. She used a few choice cuss words and offensive slang to refer to me, but I won't even dignify to reproduce them.
I will talk as loud as I want. It is outrageous what happens here. Are you in charge?
Yes, ma'am. I'm the manager of this coffee place, and if you don't lower your voice, I will have to ask you to leave. Now, can you explain to me why you are yelling at my staff and my customers?
I'm a member of the Family League.
The Family League in Mexico is a right-wing association that fights against LGBT plus rights in general. Abortion, single moms, and everything that is not your traditional mommy, daddy, and kids family.
I will have this place shut down in a heartbeat if I don't get compensation right now.
The manager, being a bit sassy at this point, says, and what exactly should we compensate you for?
That freak made my boy transgender! You allow a predator to be here and corrupt young minds!
And again, how does that entitle you to any compensation?
I will have to pay for therapy for my son now. Maybe even ask my congregation to pray over him. That costs money! This is reckless endangerment. Those freaks should be kept away from the innocent, God-fearing people.
One of the other customers in the store said,
hey, come on, lady, stop it. You've been drumming our ears off for 10 minutes now with your ignorance and your transphobia. If anyone is entitled to compensation, it's us.
The manager stepped in saying, I agree with him, ma'am. Please leave the premises.
This is not the end of things. I will have your license in no time.
She grabs her kid and then proceeds to leave. The waiter, blocking her way, says, there is still the matter of the bill, ma'am, and give me the ID back.
I didn't even get to drink my coffee. It's already cold. I shouldn't have to pay.
That sounds like a you problem, but if you want me to call mall security in no time, we can let them settle this, and in the meanwhile, I'll also let them write a report of you having your son that is clearly underage in a smoking area. Now, this kind of complaint may lead to the equivalent of CPS involved if mall security passes the report to the police. Karen is defeated at this point. Such a wonderful view. She threw my ID on the ground, got her kid, and started leaving. As she left, laughed. I couldn't help myself. Probably not my brightest moment, but yeah, I was pissed. I said, yelling at her kid, "Hey kiddo, remember, you can be anything you want to be." Karen huffed and puffed and gave me the finger as she walked away. So now that you know how everything went down, am I the jerk? First off, why would she want to take her kids into a smoking area anyway? These are young kids, and she's obviously not smoking, but yet she wants her kids to be around smoke and take up these tables out there. So the whole premise behind trying to get the idea in the first place was because of the smoking, but that's obviously when everything radically shifted. I just don't get any situation where somebody's minding their own business and you're going up to them and you're telling them what to do when they're supposed to be there in the first place. But then it turns into this whole situation where she thinks that her kid is being corrupted, but the OP here, the original poster, never would have even talked to either one of them if the lady wasn't demanding the ID of the OP that is sitting in the smoking area smoking. It's one thing to have your beliefs and stand by them, but when someone's minding their own business, they're not encroaching on you, you're encroaching on them, regardless of what side of the fence you land on. The way the lady makes this sound is like they're all three sitting out there, and then the OP goes up and whispers something into the kid's ear, and then all of a sudden the kid starts saying,
"Mommy, I want to be trans."
which is not exactly how it went down. So let me know how you see the situation from whichever country you're from. If you're from Mexico, let me know if this sort of interaction is normal, or whatever country you happen to be from, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. A woman won't let me get into the building where I live and pretends to work there. Here's some context to the story. I live in the center of town that does a yearly half marathon. The marathon route basically traps me in my building as it goes on roads around it, which I need to cross to reach the rest of town. It has been taking place years and was here before me, so I'm not bothered by it. I just avoid leaving my building until most of the runners have gone. On this day, I had an errand to run, but was going out in the afternoon, so was forced to push through the crowds on pavements to then wait and cross through the runners. I managed to get to the shops and do what I needed to do. On my way back, it started hailing a crazy amount. Huge stones that made it look like it had been snowed on. Spectators were sheltering underneath shop awnings, including the one above the door to my building, where a mom and her two younger children were standing. I tell her, "Excuse me, sorry, can I just quickly get through?" The entitled mother, looking absolutely furious, says,
"Now find your own spot. We are standing here."
I think, fair enough, the door isn't too obvious. But I say, "No, actually I just live in this building, so I need to get through that door."
"I don't think so. These are offices. I work in them. Don't try and fool me and my girls into moving for you."
They're not offices, so Lord knows why she'd say that. She's still in my way. So I tell her, "I really do live here. Look, I have my key and I can open this door."
"No, can you just piss off and go somewhere else?"
She is being loud, so everyone nearby can hear and is staring. I tell her, "Look, I really do just want to get into my home. Everyone is looking at us now, so if I'm just trying to get you out of the way, I don't think they'll put up with that, do you?"
"Fine. Remember, everyone is looking."
She moves, so I put my key in the door. Cue a surprise, it opens. I give the entitled mother a little wave as I walk through, and I see a couple of onlookers stifling some laughter. After all that, the entitled mother walks off with her two daughters into the hail. There's been a lot of comments about why she lied. My building genuinely does look like a block of offices, so my guess is that she was assuming I was lying to get away from the hail and made a quick judgment. I look very young, have pink hair, piercings, and tattoos to decide her lie was more believable than mine. Pro tip, if you can possibly avoid it, I know it's near impossible in busy cities, do not get an apartment in a business area of town or city. People are jerks. This is the worst inconvenience. But we get so much staring and people looking into our lobby when we're unloading food, shopping, moving big items, just leaving the building. It is annoying. So with all that said, was the mother the jerk? Apparently the mother can just shamelessly lie and not even get embarrassed about it when she's found out. She claimed that she worked in that building, therefore she must know what that building is. So in front of everyone there, she just shamelessly lies about herself and then she gets caught and it's no big deal. She's okay with it. Besides all the reasons the OP gave, it does sound pretty annoying to live in a place like that where for every marathon or parade or whatever it is, your streets are blocked off around you. I've heard of situations where cities will have music festivals downtown, and in some of those cases there are a few last holdout houses, and those people have to walk through metal detectors in order to leave their own homes, and they're escorted out of the festival because they don't get a free ticket to go to the festival that is surrounding their actual house. So they're constantly going in and out of metal detectors during the entire length of that festival. This situation kind of sounds like that, except it's a lot shorter of a time period. So if you're in this situation, let me know how you would handle it down below in jerk or not a jerk and why. My parents' polyamorous partner tries to parent me. Am I the jerk for refusing to apologize to my parents' polyamorous partner? I'm a 16-year-old female. My parents parents, who are both 36 years old, became poly 4 years ago. They came to me and explained what it meant to be that. They've been dating the same person, Madison, who's a 27-year-old female, for the past 3 years, and she moved in with us 2 years ago. She's overall an okay-ish person, but she's very much into being some kind of cool mom, which she will never be for me. My parents' relationship with Madison is very serious. Both of my families know her, and while not everyone accepts her as a real part of the marriage, they're okay with her too. For me, she's more like a roommate my parents love, rather than a parent figure or someone that I have to listen to. My dad is okay with her trying to discipline me, but my mom is not. Well, 2 days ago, my boyfriend walked me home and I invited him to have a piece of cake since my mom's birthday was the day before and he couldn't come. He said yes, and we went inside, and that's honestly everything we did. Madison came home an hour after and we were still in the kitchen, eating and watching TikToks together. I had my head on his shoulder and we were just chilling. She saw us and began to act very weird. She said hi and drank a glass of water, but after 10 minutes, she just stood there pretending to watch her phone, but it was pretty obvious she was watching us. My boyfriend felt uncomfortable and he said his goodbyes. When Madison and I were left alone, she approached me saying that it wasn't okay being alone with a boy at 16 years old and she would appreciate that I don't do it again. I was honestly shocked. My parents know my boyfriend pretty well, and more than that, they know me. I would never betray their trust by doing something I'm not allowed yet, just because I was alone. She wanted to keep talking, but I cut her off and said that she had no right to give me the talk, and she wasn't my parent in any form to try and parent me or give me unsolicited advice. She said that she was just trying to help me, but I said she better not. And any concern she had, she could talk it through with my real parents to see if it fits, and they will talk to me. But just because she was dating them both didn't make her mommy too, and I went to my room. This morning while my dad drove me to school, he said that Madison talked to both of them and my mom decided that she overstepped, but that he agreed with her and he would appreciate a heads up when my boyfriend and I are alone, and that if it was okay for me, I could apologize. But I said I didn't feel like it, and he said he was disappointed. Update from the future. Per my last update, around 5 p.m., my mom got home, and 30 or so minutes later, I asked my dad and her if we could talk. Madison was at the gym, so we just sat on the couch and I was honest. I told my mom what my dad had said in the morning ride, and I confessed to my dad that it was unfair that just because Madison thought it was improper of us, my boyfriend and I, to be alone in the house, he suddenly changes the game. I've always been completely honest with them, and I reminded them so. I said that as soon as we got home, I sent them a text telling them that I was already here and that my boyfriend was over, and he said nothing there. I also told him that I didn't feel comfortable with Madison living here and that maybe I never was. But I was so young to understand what it really meant to have poly parents, and while I don't really care for the romantic life ever since Madison snitched on me, it had made me feel like I'm walking on eggshells in my own house, and that my dad saying he was disappointed felt like Madison matters more than me in the house. I've always been a loner, always. I spent time with my parents, yes, but I love to be alone in my room, in the kitchen, in the living room, doing my own stuff. I've never had to hide for anything, but Madison proved that whatever she doesn't like or she thinks that I shouldn't be doing, she'll spy and tell. And it wasn't fair because while Madison is nothing to me and her opinion doesn't matter, I've proved to them that I can be trusted and I don't like doing things like that behind their back. While saying that, my voice cracked and my dad came to my side and hugged me, saying he was so sorry and that I was right. He apologized to me again for the way that he acted in the car and that he should have never said he was disappointed because he wasn't, that he couldn't have asked for a better kid, and that he felt so bad for hurting me to the point that I had to talk to them alone. He hugged me, and my mom just looked at him and said they had to talk to Madison alone because she has said countless times that she doesn't appreciate her giving advice or thinking that she has some kind of responsibility over me. She also said that I never ever have to walk on eggshells in here because this is my house and will forever be my house, and if I didn't act shamefully, then I don't have to be ashamed, and gave me a kiss on the forehead. She asked me to call my boyfriend so they could apologize to him and gave us some money to go to Starbucks for a few hours, and so we did. I honestly don't know everything that happened between them and Madison, but my dad said that he was tired of having to please women in his life, and that whatever he did for mom was a wrong for Madison and vice versa, and that for a while he has wanted to break that relationship but wasn't sure if my mom wanted to because despite not agreeing in parenting choices, my mom loved her a lot and it showed. But my mom said she was done too, and they will be attending couples counseling to see where it gets them. They also gave Madison 2 weeks to move out, but she was already packing when I got home, and she went to stay with her parents. She glared at me once, and apart from that, didn't even look at me again. So I guess there's that. That's the update. My parents broke up with Madison and I got to talk to them. It's really weird not having her around, but I really like it. My mom read this post and some of the responses. My dad decided not to because everything was settled. After reading the post, my mom also apologized for bringing Madison in with me so young, and while I said I didn't really mind, she said sorry. So was I the jerk for refusing to apologize to my parents' poly partner? I'm kind of surprised that despite all the decisions that led up to this point, the parents actually heard her out. I feel like a lot of times when something really emotional happens to you, parents will dismiss it or write it off or not really take it seriously. But in this case, not only did they listen and try to understand, they actually ended the relationship with Madison full stop. Leading up to this point, the parents were obviously not on the same page when it came to the OP. One of the top responses highlighted this, referring to the section where the OP said, "My dad is okay with her trying to discipline me, but my mom is not." Right off the bat, this had me mildly concerned. That's kind of a big thing to disagree on. What were they thinking? If you guys have been watching the channel for a long time, you probably remember way back there was a story about the kids that disowned their polyamorous parents. They just completely cut them out of their lives for good. But if I remember right in that story, the parents never told the kids. It was a big secret, and then when it got found out, that's what made the adult kids say that it was morally wrong and they want nothing to do with them no matter what. In this case, it's a lot different because the kid was way younger when this was revealed to them, and they didn't really have the ability to process everything that it meant, as the OP kind of said here. To be specific, she says, "I also told them that I didn't feel comfortable with Madison living here and that maybe I never was, but I was so young to understand what it really meant to have poly parents." So with all that said, what would you do if you were in this situation? And jerk or not a jerk, a lawyer tries to scam a programmer into building a very complicated website for him by exploiting loopholes in their work agreement contract so that he would get the free labor but not have to pay. Luckily, the programmer saw this coming before it happened and executed his revenge masterfully. He put something in the code that would happen if the scammer lawyer tried to pull something, and that's exactly what happened. Here's how it went down. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Before starting, I just want to say I'm from a small country in Europe. The laws and regulation here are different than in the United States. We have a government agency here that has everything to do with registering companies, and they do keep track of who's who. If you are a serial startup guy who leaves nothing but burnt ashes behind you, you cannot do it here. You have to register the owner and the members of the board of the company if there is one. If you have a prior history of failed companies or you've broken the law in some regard, you are blacklisted at that establishment. With that said, here's the story. I've worked as an independent contractor in the IT field for over 20 years, doing all manner of things from creating a simple HTML site to managing a big hotel's complete IT infrastructure. One of the many clients I had back in the day was a rental company, and I was coding a big-ish custom website for them. Now, I had heard a lot of warnings about not working with this guy that owned it. He had a reputation that he was sharp as a tack, backstabbing and conniving. He was a lawyer after all, so I went into the partnership with that in mind. He wanted a new website for his renting gig where people would list their home for rent, renters would sign up and pay a subscription to the site, and he would get the whole lot. Nothing out of the ordinary there. So we make a pretty good deal on paper, we sign it, and I get started on the project. Coding everything in PHP goes well, but he demands suddenly that I show him progress only a week into the process. He wants to see the website front end now. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I tried explaining to him that the front end work isn't scheduled to start until after 6 weeks of back end programming, and that I only had pure code to show right now. The contract we signed clearly states this. He then gets on his high horse and demands that I put everything on hold to do the front end first, design, and then program. I, being really young at the time and fairly naive, agreed to this without asking for it to actually be added to the contract as an addendum and start working on the design now. Now, the contract stated that I was given free reign of the design decisions as long as I maintained the same color scheme and used the same logo on the site. So I make a fast draft in Fireworks. This was back when it was a Macromedia product before the Adobe acquisition. And within 2 days I show him. He is not impressed and demands a different direction and sets up a list of demands. I, as always, aim to please the customer and just do what he wants. I design a new layout with this new list of demands, but he doesn't like that either. That's how the next 3 months go, a never-ending circle where he is never happy with anything. Now, close to 4 months into the project, he demands to see a working showcase of the backend. I point out that he himself changed the order how the project was being done and had demanded that I do the front end design first instead of the backend as stated in the contract, which he now turns to me and says, yes, the contract we both signed says you will have a working backend to show me at the end of the month. If you don't honor that, I will have to take my business elsewhere and seek compensation for your lack of professionalism. Okay, now I have 12 days to do a backend for the site. I get a friend to help me out and we work tirelessly through a weekend and I have a good base to work from in 9 days. Mind you, at this point he has only paid the security on the contract, about 5% of the total price, and has shielded himself from paying by hiding behind, well, if you can't honor the contract, why should I? Finish X work and I'll pay you as per the contract. Remembering now all the warnings I heard about this guy, I decide to add a special function to the code just to be safe. More on that later. So now it's the end of the month. We have a front end design he is okay with, a back end that has been finished to about 85% of what is required according to the contract, and I still have 1 month left to finish everything else. Time for show and tell. Since I was working on this development, I was running it on my own dev server and showed him this on a browser on his computer. I mentioned to him that since I only had 512 kilobytes per second upstream from the server, it might lag a little, but it wouldn't when it would be put on the production server he has his website on at his hosting company. He says that's okay and the demonstration goes on. As I'm showing him the site, both front end and back end, I can see he's immensely happy with it. Although he would never say so out loud, he's trying to hide his smile that pops up regularly and his eyes gleam with all the added ways he can now start making money from it. Anyway, he now says it's way too slow, this is wrong, that is wrong, blah blah blah. He says, I want you to put it up on my production server and see how the speed is. I say, okay, no problem, I can make that happen. Please pay 50% of the contract and I'll get right on it. So I wait a few days and then I get an email from him where he includes a forwarded message from the bank detailing a transaction from him to me in the amount of the 50% I asked for. So I push the system to his production server so he can take a look at it under beta.hisdomain.tld. I then sent him an email stating that he can try the system with the supplied credentials. What he doesn't know is that I knew he had been fishing around for another programmer to do this project, to pick up from a lazy deadbeat who couldn't do anything right, as he put it. So I knew he would most likely be trying to screw me. What I also suspected was the email that he sent me with the transaction proof was a fake, which it ended up being. This is where I get the revenge 3 separate ways. Pro revenge number 1. Remember that small function I mentioned? Well, what it did is if user X, his user, tries to remove user Y, my administrative account, from the system without one setting being changed in the configuration first, the system will first delete and then purge the database and then remove all the documents in the web root. Well, not 5 minutes after he reads the email from me, he does just that. He tries to delete my admin user from the system to lock me out. Guess who has nothing of the project left? He does. Pro revenge number 2. Since it is considered forgery to spoof an email, specifically from a bank, I sent the information to the authorities and he goes under investigation by both the police and the bank lawyers. And lastly, pro revenge number 3. I sold this system to a competitor of his for a better price than originally contracted to him. And last I knew, he was now blacklisted from owning a company, as well as he lost his rights to work as a lawyer. I only got that 5% he paid at the beginning, and for working for just over 5 months on this project, that hardly is anything. But the knowledge of his demise will keep my heart warm for the rest of my life. Am I the jerk? So before I talk about this story, you guys have probably noticed my voice is kind of strange. I've actually lost my voice, but now it's recovering, so the rest of this video is probably going to sound a little bit different. Before, just a couple days ago, it was a lot worse. I tried recording this a bunch of times, but you could barely hear me or understand what I was saying. So even if it sounds weird now, it's still a lot better than it was even just 2 days ago. I think I was just making too many weird voices back to back to back. So cross your fingers and hopefully we're back to normal ASAP. Going back to the story, I just can't understand people that try to hire other people with the intent on scamming them as their primary objective. We didn't know it until the end of the story, but he was already trying to find somebody to replace the OP here who he thought was a lazy deadbeat. And if anything, the OP, the original poster here, was exactly the opposite. Not only did he go above and beyond doing what he was supposed supposed to do. He even reorganized it in a way that was really difficult to do. The lawyer guy here tried to engineer this so that the OP would fall on his face and not be able to complete it in time, and thus the lawyer would say you violated our contract, but the original poster here made it work even with those conditions. He just had to get an extra hand. So it surprises me that even though the lawyer went into this with the intent on scamming the OP, why would he still try to scam him when he did actually jump through all these hoops and make it happen? If he's planning on paying the second guy, whoever he was going to bring in to replace him, then why not just pay the first guy the full amount that he agreed to? The answer to that is probably just he was going to scam the second guy too. So if this was you in this situation, let me know how you would handle it down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for telling my adopted sister to go back to her true family? I know how the title sounds, but if you are not willing to listen to the full story before commenting, then don't comment at all. Your perspective about the situation might change. Being the only child in the family was awesome. I got to have my own room, friends, iPad, etc., which I am now obligated to share with my so-called sister. Yes, even friends. They adopted her 1 year ago for a reason I till now fail to understand, but I strongly believe is because I was not good enough for them. I'm really hurt because they never ever asked me if I wanted another sibling. I just had to accept the fact that I suddenly have a younger sister and should now share everything I have with her and treat her as a part of the family. How am I supposed to do that? I can't just start feeling close to her, and the fact that I am forced to involve her in all of my plans infuriates me and makes me hate her even more. Today my friends and I decided to challenge ourselves to stay awake all day by doing many different sorts of things that would keep us from getting bored. Obviously, since we share the same room, my sister had heard this and told me that she would like to join the activity. I was honestly hoping I could finally do something without her, but of course, she had to ruin it. I told her no, and she said she is going to tell my parents about it. I then got mad and told her to get the heck out of my house and go back to her biological family. Excuse my language. Her voice then changed and she told me she doesn't know where they are, but I told her to shut her mouth and not get emotional with me because I really had it with her. She left the room and I started crying because of how stressed she makes me, but realized I should wipe my tears fast because my parents can't see me like this. Otherwise, they will believe my adopted sister's words and I'll get punished for it. She obviously told them, but I denied what I said. I normally don't lie, so they believe my words and are now talking to her. Obviously without being harsh, and will still not punish her because God forbid they treat my adopted sister wrongly. So, am I the jerk for the way I reacted? This person sounds awful. What a horrible thing to tell someone. The OP here is locked into this weird egocentric mindset where they think that everything is about them, and sharing anything is such an inconvenience that they would rather tell their adopted sister to go back to their biological family. The saddest part is that she said that she didn't know where they are. When you're that young, how do you even respond to that? If you've ever grown up in a situation where you're living with another person's family, it can be rough, like you're a second-class citizen, even if you are also a kid in that same house. You'll never get gifts when they get gifts, you'll never get praise when they get praise, and most of that is par for the course. But this is taking it to the next level because of how oblivious the OP is here. Oblivious to the existence of anyone else besides herself. So is she the jerk? Yes, of course she's the jerk, but let me know if you've ever experienced or seen anything like this in your own life. And as always, you can always submit your own stories via the link down below in the description. My boss just asked me not to wear my normal pants to work, and I've never been angrier. I wear normal pants to work. Our dress code is business casual, and I've gotten myself sized by a reputable tailor. All my slacks and chinos are from normal brands you'd find at Macy's and are normal/relaxed fit. However, yesterday my boss called me into her office and told me I would no longer be allowed to wear the pants I normally wear to the office and would have to wear something less revealing. Apparently, my bulge is inappropriate for the workplace. I am normal sized. I actually measured it to make sure I wasn't crazy. I'm pretty close to the US average. Would a woman with large honkers be told that she can't wear anything but baggy clothing? Would she be told by her boss that she must wear nothing but restrictive sports bras to work? I doubt it. Especially in my workplace, where women 2 seats down from me wear far more provocative clothing than my slacks. I asked her, what should I wear instead? These are my size. And she said, just go buy something looser or get a bigger size. I am not rebuying my entire collection of work pants. Go ahead and report me to HR. Let's see them try and fire me for having too much bulge. To clarify, I am aware that women have been told to cover up quite a bit in the workplace. I'm not dismissing that, just highlighting the very visible/double standard of bodily expression in my own workplace. If you really want to get specific and see a picture of the pants, I can't post it here just in case, but I'll post it over on the Am I the Jerk Twitter and Am I the Jerk Discord. It's probably not even worth checking out. There's really not much to see, but it's there there if you want to see it. The original poster added, "Note that my member is sitting to the right of the zipper relative to the viewer." Then there was an update from the future. My boss demanded that I replace all my pants and then told me she needed to supervise me while I got the replacements. She is now on administrative leave. This is an update to the bulge saga. I made a post a bit back about an insane demand from my boss. Essentially, she told me that my pants were too revealing and that they showed my bulge. They do not. She then told me that I needed to replace my work pants. To recap what advice I got from my original thread, here it is. Go talk to HR. Never talk to HR. Go talk to a lawyer. A lawyer will waste your time. Your pants are fine. You need new pants. She wants to bang. She hates you. After dwelling a little bit on my options, I settled for a middle-of-the-road approach. I contacted 2 well-known lawyers in my area and got a consultation from them about my situation. They both thought that while I was harassed, the case wasn't bulletproof as there was little evidence and no pattern of abuse. They then also warned me about going to HR without any evidence, as it can cascade into me losing my job in unexpected ways. Fine. Since I needed evidence and a pattern of abuse, I first wanted to read up on what standards my company has set for managers when it comes to dealing with harassment. I requested from our online learning catalog to take the harassment and tough conversations course that are normally required for only managers. In the tough conversations module, there was a scenario where a male supervisor needed to ask a female employee to correct her work outfit as it did not meet the company's dress code. The module, in plain English, states the supervisor is not to intervene and to refer the issue to HR. I assumed that was the inverse. A female supervisor reprimanding a male's outfit would follow the same standards. I then sent an email to my boss asking her to follow up on our previous conversation. I wrote, "To boss, I want to clarify some things regarding our previous conversation. Please confirm whether or not my understanding of your statements is correct. My pants violated our dress code by being too tight and revealing my bulge. The issue pertains to all my pants, not a specific subset of my wardrobe. This is a requirement from management and not a request. Please get back to me. Sincerely, OP." It took over a full workday, but the response I got was, "To OP, yes, I did tell you to fix your wardrobe. This is not a request. Boss." I immediately reply, "To boss, if management is demanding that I replace such a large amount of work clothing, it must be done at the expense of the company. Please let me know if this is possible, as we will have to work something else out if it isn't. Sincerely, OP." And her response later was, "OP, this can be done, but I must be with you to supervise your shopping. Check my schedule for my availability." Goodness gracious, suddenly the she wants to bang theory seemed less crazy. I backed up the emails to a personal account and sent everything to HR. Less than 2 hours later, I received a phone call asking me to come into HR immediately and drop my work unless it was time critical. I complied. I was told that they were taking this matter very seriously and that I should take the rest of the day off. I came back to work today and my boss is gone. I was told right before lunch that she had been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation and that I shouldn't worry. It's against company policy to engage in any form of professional retaliation. I sit here now like a king on a porcelain throne, telling you about my victory during my post-lunch dump. Bye-bye, boss lady. So, am I the jerk for essentially getting my boss fired when she told me to buy less revealing pants for work? I don't really buy the theory that the boss is into the OP here, because if she was, why would she have him buy less revealing pants? Unless she was absolutely certain that he was going to ask to use company money to buy these pants and that she knew she was going to be able to accompany him alone while they were shopping. But that would be a long shot. The chances of it going down exactly like that don't seem very likely. Most people would either just buy the pants or go straight to HR. So those two goals seem like they're in conflict to make sense for that being the actual reason, because she wants to get him alone, but that's very unlikely, at least via this method, and she's telling him to be less revealing, which if she liked him, I would assume that she wouldn't, unless she's just getting jealous because he's flaunting in front of other coworkers in her mind. I think the much more likely thing is this is just some sort of power trip where she overstepped her bounds. The feeling of being able to exercise power like this for arbitrary things is probably what she was going after, but maybe you see this completely differently. Let me know how you interpret this down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My landlord wants to fine and evict me for doing the deed with my partner in my apartment. He cites illegal activity. So this is a bit of a weird one, so please bear with me. I rent an apartment from a man who lives down the street. It's a nice enough apartment, and up till now I've had very few issues. The problem is that he's rather conservative, and I'm rather gay. Once he found out that my boyfriend wasn't just a friend who spent a lot of time with me, he tried to bar him from coming over. I told him to pound sand, as it goes. Now, he sent me a letter stating that effective immediately, there shall be a $250 fine every time I, quote, commit the sin of homosexuality in my apartment. If I refuse to sign the addendum, he claims he will file to evict me due to breach of the lease, specifically the clause that the premises shall not be used for illegal activity. He cites Massachusetts State Code that criminalizes fornication outside of marriage and crimes against good nature, which he insists means male-male relations. The statute does not define it any further. I looked them up and they are evidently real crimes. I know they're not enforceable by any stretch, but I technically have done illegal activity in my apartments. I really don't want to move early. The lease started in September or have an eviction on my record. I know this seems absolutely silly, but the fact that they are still technically crimes in the book gives me a little pause. Do I need to take this seriously, or can I start coming up with more ways to say pound sand? What should I do if he does try to take further action? Jumping into the future, there is an update. I feel like people assumed a much worse picture of my landlord, people telling me to buy cameras, etc. He's a nice enough person, but has some very problematic views. He grew up in rural Arkansas, I think, that or Alabama, and then came to Massachusetts later in life. This was his first time being a landlord, so he still had the idea in his head that it was his house, so to speak. That, coupled with the fact that up until now he'd avoided even talking with people who were openly gay, and that led to a lot of ignorance. I know some of you are hoping that I'd screw him over for all he's worth or torment him with daily updates of my gay agenda, but alas, I decided to take a calmer approach and it seemed to work. Yesterday I sat down with him and first laid out various information that you guys helped me find. Everything from orientation being a protected class, treble damages, and the fact that those old laws are 100% completely unenforceable. He realized very quickly that he was in the wrong and that he had messed up bad. He also admitted that he didn't even know what he defined as the sin of homosexuality or how he'd enforce the fine. He just knee-jerk reacted to the shocking news for him. We ended up chatting for about 2 hours then, and it started with me dispelling a lot of misconceptions about gays. Some of his notions were comically bad. Like, if I weren't having a conversation with him, I'd think he were a caricature. He's a lot older than me and his kids recently moved across the country, and he was renting their house for him. So I think he had some notions of being a father figure to me and thinking that he could lay down the law or set me straight. He seemed genuine and seemed to be legitimately concerned for me and my soul. I reminded him to hate the sin and not the sinner, and that seemed to resonate with him. He still doesn't agree with my lifestyle, but he's willing to accept it. He seemed to be earnestly trying, and in my mind that counts for a lot. He agreed to write both me and my boyfriend a letter of apology, which I will be keeping copies of in case this matter comes up again and needs to go to court. The past few days have been super stressful and it seems to be resolved. If things go well, I might even potentially renew the lease come September. I'll still be on guard for any shenanigans, but I think I'll leave the issue where it lies for now. If this was all a ruse or him backpedaling, I'll go at him with everything I can in the future. But for now, I'm satisfied. I truly appreciate everyone that offered advice, moral and immoral support. So what do you think I should have done? I don't know anything about state codes in other states, but that is pretty surprising that that is supposedly a law even though it's not enforceable. I actually googled that state and crimes against nature, and on the malegislator.gov website there is a section called Section 34 Crime Against Nature, and the only thing it says on that page is Section 34, whoever commits the abominable and detestable crime against nature, either with mankind or with a beast, shall be punished by imprisonment in the state prison for not more than 20 years. So that's it. That's the definition as far as I can find. The beast part makes it pretty clear that it's against bestiality of some sort, but the mankind part, you could really interpret that however you want. I would say that's pretty open-ended. This is something that probably needs a little more clarification in the modern age as to exactly what does this mean. Otherwise, you're going to keep having situations like this where a landlord will cite it or somebody will cite it without them being able to enforce it because it's an outdated law.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.